A great day in Kershaw County. We have a quorum. All members are present. And we have 3 basketball games tonight, male and 3 female. All the 3 schools are busy tonight at basketball. And last night was CMA was at basketball. But here we are, serving our country and our county. I wish you all a wonderful and safe Merry Christmas. And with that, we will ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. Mr. Connell.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for thank you for this Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Connell. And with that, we move on to public comments. Mr. DeBose.
Five people have signed up. The first person that signed up is Steve Zobel.
As Mr. Zobel comes forward, I want you to know that this is a time for information gathering. There will be no comments back and forth between council and the speaker. And I ask you to keep your comments to about 5 minutes and on the topic. And please, Mr. Zobel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilman, first off, I'm here tonight as not only a member of the Recreation Commission, but also a citizen of Kershaw County. I'd like to also say, first off, that I am for the river parcel project 100%. I think it's a grand thing, and I think it's going to be a big, big plus to the county of Kershaw. But at the same time, we were asked as a commission not too long ago to hold a series of public meetings where the public input was given to us as a commission, and the commission put some, and again, I'm not speaking for the commission. This is solely my opinion. But the commission presented a plan of action to county council that listed in priority what the public thought needed to be taken care of first before the river project. There were 8 projects prior, or that thought would be more of a bigger priority out of 18 than the river parcel. All I'm here saying tonight is this: I would ask that we see these projects completed, or at least started in the completion phase becoming, before we delve in head first into the river project. Like I said, I am all for the river project. I think it's going to be wonderful. We do have 2 other river projects, one in Camden, or 2 in Camden actually, along the river in process. So we're going to have a wonderful waterfront. I just ask, please, we complete the projects, or some of them, that we've already started.
Thank you, Mr. Zobel. Mr. DeBose?
Next person is Richard Lackey.
Mr. Lackey.
My name is Richard Lackey, Chairman, council members, and staff. I first would say I want to thank you for the excellent governance of our county. I'm here representing the American Legion Post 17 and some interested citizens. And I want to talk about the river parcel concept. Now, I'm here to remind you of the letter on this subject sent several weeks ago from our post commander and historian. Certainly, I have no argument with the discussion that went before me. I've always been very supportive of public recreation. This is a historical area from a military standpoint. And we believe it is appropriate to include a military history theme in the concept you develop. In other words, not necessarily a military park so much as it included in the theme of the finished product. A brief look at history. In the Revolutionary War, there were numerous important skirmishes along the river. There's an existing historical marker on the other side of the bridge below the highway that designates it as Patriots Point and explains the reason for the marker. It could just as well be in the new park as opposed to being down there below the bridge where very few people even know where it's at, because it represents several things that happened along the river. I'm sure there were times in the Civil War when there were military engagements along the river area. I conferred with my history expert, and he basically was telling me that the most important one was downriver a ways, but that's what it was. In the early days of World War II, the famous 505th Airborne Regiment parachute drop and maneuvers were performed in the area. Troops were dropped all over the area and probably on both sides of the river. There's a marker near there to commemorate this first such airborne demonstration. This was training for subsequent battles in the war. And if you look at history, I think you'll know that the 505th was very important in the war, basically in Europe and I believe in North Africa also. There are other obscure military and veteran memorials in the local area that could be better displayed in such an area. There are about 6,000 veterans in Kershaw County and a large contingent of active military from the large military installations nearby that have homes in Kershaw County. I'm just saying that there's a large military presence among us that has to do with both the retired or former military and those that are active today. And we could also point out that the area is very interested in military history, as evidenced by the response to the visit of the Vietnam Memorial Wall that we had here this year. We had either the first or second largest attendance of any wall visit in the United States in 2018. There were about 48 visits of the wall in U.S. cities in 2018. Most were much larger cities than our local area. This had a positive impact, and a permanent military park would have a positive impact, tourist impact, as well as a local impact. And I would add that I think it could be an educational opportunity for many of our citizens and our school students to know a little bit more about that area. It's significant in our country's history. If you really delve into it, this area is very important in our country's history. I thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I will provide.
Thank you very much, sir, and thank you all our veterans. I see them tonight. Thank you, sir. Mr. DeBose.
Third person that signed up is Terry Carlson.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name.
Terry Carlson.
Thank you very much. Ms. Carlson?
I'm Terry. Hi. November 29th, my 5 goats were killed. And I found a chain in my pen this long and probably 10, 15 feet. And one end was broke, so probably a dog got loose. But my goats were big alpine goats and 7, 8 years fat. And from everybody I talked to, one dog can't kill that many goats that the goats would have got the dog first. Anyways, since then, the people I've talked to have had problems with chickens and different farm animals, with pack animals. And I talked to Jim Tatum at the newspaper. He did an article about 6 months ago about the problem in Elgin. And he's going to look into it for me. I went to the Elgin PD. They couldn't help me because I'm Lugolf district. So I went there and they said they couldn't help me. I called animal control and they took a report, but they said basically there's nothing they can do. And so it's a problem. And Wendy King came out. She was the only vet I could get to come out. 2 of my goats were alive, and one died before she got there, and the other died throughout the night. And anyways, I just wanted to bring that to the attention for other people that might happen. Thank you.
Ms. Carlton, do we have your address so we can contact you? Thank you very much, Ms. Carlton. Thank you. Mr. DeBose.
Next person signed up is Tom Webb III.
Mr. Webb.
About that last subject, I don't know what you can do about coyotes. Can't really control them. They do kill livestock. Lost goats to them. Maybe somebody could invent some kind of really good sauce that would be good on coyote and people would eat them all. Anyway, it's getting close to Christmas, and I have a Christmas poem for you. It's a little bit political, and I hope you'll find it a little bit fun. It's Rudolph Ain't a Yankee. His mama was a Southern deer. His daddy was enlightened. His friends were mean as sin back then, so he was always fighting. Rudolph, with his Southern drawl, attracted all the does, so someone had the heartless gall to punch him in the nose. You're not one of us, they said, and Rudolph, with his nose so red, burning in the dark, tried to hide the glow somewhere, but the dogs would always bark. It really didn't harm him, though. It added to his charm, and when the icy wind would blow, it helped to keep him warm. Now he can fly in blizzards better than the rest and find his way around at night better than the best. But you all know the story of Rudolph and his glory. That was Rudolph in his youth, before the CFR and such, before he learned the truth. And now our boy finds his joy telling all he can about the New World Order and the Bilderberger plan. Resist, he chid, stand against the flow, or you'll just drag their chains around everywhere you go. And don't be shy, you all. Don't be shy no more. It might be close to Christmas now, but the devil's at the door. Well, he converted Cupid and fell in love with Vixie, and the whole darn herd learned every word, and they're always singing Dixie. And on the edge of outer space, above old Santa's place, there's sonic booms and southern tunes where they play and love and chase. So here it is, folks, directly from the mouth of our hero from the north who always loved the south. It's his advice to all of us for when the fates aren't being nice. A nose is nothing, I suppose, nothing till it glows, and so it is with life. And aches and pains and bitter pangs are nothing but the spice. So do your best, your very best. The world must see your light. And to all of y'all who heed the call, to all of y'all, good night.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Mr. DeBose.
The last person is signed up, the fifth and last person is Todd Melton.
Is Todd here? Apparently not. Maybe somebody can check outside.
I think Gerald is.
Yep, here he comes.
No, he's not coming.
Not here.
Yes.
All right, well, very good. I think we can proceed. Is that it, Mr. DeBose?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's it.
And in public comments, we move now to a series of public hearings, the first of which is a public hearing in regards to an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the CCTC. It'll be later voted on in a third reading. I'll now open the public hearing for public comments.
Amy Connor's signed up.
All right, Amy, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and council members. I'm Amy Kynard with the Kershaw County Chamber of Commerce. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight regarding the change in your intergovernmental agreement with Central Carolina College. This is a time of tremendous change for the Kershaw County Chamber of Commerce. Leaving a beautiful historic building, changing our role in visitor services, and relocating our office, if you approve third reading tonight, marks the beginning of a greater focus for the Chamber on businesses in Kershaw County. While these were not easy decisions for us to make, we do believe that these changes are necessary, not only to ensure the longevity of the Chamber, but to also improve support for businesses in our community. We are proud to be aligning ourselves with organizations like Central Carolina that help develop the workforce that local businesses need to continue to prosper and grow. And we're looking forward to opportunities to also partner with the Kershaw County School District and economic development in new and different ways that are better facilitated by being located on the same campus. I want to thank you on behalf of the Kershaw County Chamber Board for your support of this change in this agreement. But I also want to take a moment to thank you for your support over many, many years for our efforts to manage the visitor center. No matter what our activity, our service, or our space, we will continue to be a champion for Kershaw County, and we are looking forward to our exciting future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy. Comments? Anyone else, Mr. DeBose?
No one else signed up.
And anyone else in the congregation? Nope. With that, I think we'll close that. Thank you very much, Ms. Kennard. And this hearing is closed. We open a second public hearing, a public hearing in regards to an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not exceeding $6,500,000 of general obligation funds. And with that, we'll open the hearing. Mr. Bose, anybody sign up?
No one signed up for that one.
Okay, we'll let it stay open for a moment. Seeing there's no interest in further discussion, I'll close the hearing and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the adoption of the agenda. The agenda is on the screen and also on your software there, on your computers. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as written? Mr. Arledge.
Yes, sir. I make a motion. We approve the agenda, but with a, I'd like to make a recommendation.
Why don't we get the agenda on the table and then we'll come back to you.
That's why I was
Can we have a second?
Second.
All right. Now back to you, Mr. Arledge. Any discussion?
Yes, sir. I would like to make a motion that we amend the agenda in order to discuss for Sheriff Matthews, a resolution honoring him at our next council meeting.
Very good. Do we have a second to that amendment?
Second.
Second from Mr. Connell. Any discussion?
Are you asking for a vote?
Mr. Jones, go ahead.
Are you asking for a vote?
To amend the agenda, yes.
I understand. Okay.
Yep. Thank you for that clarification. Any further discussion? And I believe we have the draft here. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Very good. And the clerk has a copy as well.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Jones was asking that, making it clear that it's going to be a vote for the resolution.
Correct.
Right. That's
Yeah,
what he's
absolutely.
Okay.
asking. Yes.
Yep. Absolutely. We'll do that. I would propose that we move it into item number 4 into new business. So we'll see that entered in the agenda based if we have a favorable vote on the amendment. Any further discussion? Seeing there is none, all those in favor of the amendment to the agenda signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous. And we'll move now to a vote on the agenda as amended. Any discussion on that? With that, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. And the agenda is amended and approved as amended. We move now to approval of minutes. A copy is at tab A and also on the screen. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Very
as
good.
submitted.
And a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Arledge. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would
Yeah.
just like for Ms. Mary to relay to Ms. Lauren, thank you for us dragging her here to almost midnight at our last meeting. Seemed like when she fills in for Ms. Mary, we keep her forever. But we're not trying to run her off, Ms. Mary. We want you to keep your assistant.
She did a great job. Further discussion? With thanks to Lauren. All those in favor of the minutes at tab A signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous, Mary. We move now to the next item, which is a series of public presentations. Item number 1 is from the Clemson Cooperative Extension led by Ryan Bean, and I believe he has most of the Clemson football team here with him. Ryan, can you come up and give that presentation and also introduce the Gamecock rooting section you have with you?
I done pulled that on them. They didn't like it.
Our players just look smaller in person.
That's right.
Okay, Ryan, please introduce your team, please.
All right, I'm Ryan Bean. I'm the Forestry and Natural Resources agent. To my right here is Sarah Marcingill. She's the 4-H agent. And to her right is Isabella Burkett, who is a 4-H'er here in Kershaw County. And they're going to be speaking as we move forward through what I have to say to you.
Very good. Move the microphone where we can hear you because you're going live on Facebook right now.
You know I don't like these, Mr. Burns. All right, so first off, I came here with David DeWitt, our row crop agent, a couple months ago to talk to you all at the budget hearing. I just want to tell y'all thank you again for your hearing us in that and allowing us to increase our budgets significantly as compared to what it was in the past. And that has really opened the door for us to do some programs that needed to be done here in the county. And we'll move into that with Sarah talking. She has really done a lot of work here since her hire back in June. But I wanted to move through just the agents that we have here in the county just so everybody stays up to date, what's going on, who we have in place, and what they're doing. Brian Beer is our livestock agent who is housed out of Lancaster County. He has several counties as an area agent like myself. The primary roles he has here in the county are putting on the CAM trainings for our poultry and swine producers that have to go through those certifications to maintain their licenses. He also does backyard poultry workshops and whatever else needs to be done and site visits as well when people have issues that they need to have answered. Jackie Jordan is our commercial horticulture agent. She helps work with the Master Gardeners. She also appears on Making It Grow television show quite often. She works with our nursery people, our people that grow vegetables and other things that are not our row crop commodities. David DeWitt is still our row crop agent for the time being. He has not been replaced. He is who has moved up, and now I am the current county coordinator for Kershaw County with the Extension Service, so that's why I'm here today doing this. Beyond that, we had a food agent last time I was here. Her name was Faith Israel, but she has since been moved into a new position, so we no longer have that. She had been doing a number of programs at the library related to healthy eating and working with some of the groups in the county that need to have that information. We are currently looking for that position. If you know of anyone that would be able to fill in that, a registered dietitian or anyone interested in working or has a background with food and food safety, we'd greatly appreciate any suggestions there. And as I mentioned, I'm Ryan Bean. I'm the Forestry and Natural Resources agent. I've been here since 2013. Prior to that, I was with the Forestry Commission here working in the same area. My areas of expertise or of interest are with longleaf pine management as well as prescribed burning. So I spend a majority of my time working and programming related to those two areas. As you can imagine, with being here in the Sandhills, those kind of apply to most of our landowners. I spend a lot of time working with the Kershaw Forest Landowner Group, who is, I don't know if y'all know, is the oldest forest landowner association in the state. has a very strong membership. They usually are 35 to 40 people strong. Chairman Burns, I know you show up to that quite often and shake hands with us. I appreciate that. I held just some things that I've had going on here recently to kind of give you an idea of what I do for the county. In working with the Forest Landowner Group, back in October, I presented them on forest pests, which is an update on insects, including beetles and so forth that affect our pine trees, and is a common concern all year, every year. We held a prescribed burn seminar and field tour at the Sandhill Research Station, which is over off Clemson Road. It's a location where I do a fair number of demonstrations as well as research related to longleaf and prescribed burning, like I mentioned. Back in early 2018, we held the 2018 Master Wildlifer Series in Greenville. We actually had a landowner from this area attend. He drove 100 miles there and 100 miles back 7 times over the course of a month and a half. It's a great series, and I say that to bring up that we have that series coming back again. It'll be hosted in Florence this time at the PD Research and Education Center, which will probably be the closest location for anyone you know that may be interested in attending a wildlife-centered program. Aside from that, tonight, if y'all get out of here by 7 o'clock, I'll be on TV. Y'all can tune in. But moving on from there, the highlight of the evening is by far, and I know we all like to hear about youth and what they're able to learn, and especially for us, getting them involved in agriculture-related activities and getting to learn how the food gets to the table and everything in between is really what we're here for tonight. And Sarah Marcingill is our new 4-H agent. Our previous 4-H agent was housed, as you know, with Kershaw County and Chesterfield County, and that became a big distraction trying to split time between the two. And so Sarah is based here in Kershaw County, spends 100% of her time here doing work with the youth of Kershaw County, and she's going to walk you through everything she's been up to.
Thank you, Ryan. And be sure to tune in tonight to Making It Grow. So, as he said, my name is Sarah Marcingill, and I am the new Kershaw County 4-H agent. And I have had a lot going on in the past few months since I was hired. And I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what all I've had going on. So when I first got here, we started doing work with the poultry showmanship here in Kershaw County with our poultry project. That is a South Carolina 4-H project. And we have 3 to 4 members of 4-H in Kershaw County that are in the poultry project. And so we decided that we wanted to do a poultry show and a poultry showmanship clinic so that those who have never shown before could learn about it before the show. And we had 7 people show up to the clinic. And that was put on by Stacy Goff, and she is a former 4-H'er's mom and a poultry enthusiast. So, and at our poultry show, which was held on September 29th at the historic Camden location, and we had 17 participate in our show, and we heard a lot back from the parents and spectators that it was a great show, and they were excited and hoping that we would have it again next year. So, our next item, the Kershaw County 4-H, I would also like to recognize our honeybee project, which is fairly new to South Carolina, is only 1 to 2 years old. And so our Kershaw County winner was Eric Roberts, and he worked with our Beekeepers Association, and he did his project and actually got his hives and set them up in his backyard, and he was able to take care of his bees, even though he lost a queen early on, and it was pretty devastating, but he bounced back, and he ended up being our county winner, so we are very proud of him. And some ongoing healthy habits programming that I'm doing with some local organizations. I partnered with the Jackson Teen Center, and my contact there is Mr. Mays, and we are actually doing a total of 12 lessons with the Jackson Teen Center, and we are doing healthy lifestyles, which involves recreation and nutrition and things that along that line that our youth are really, really looking for. And so I've also been doing that program with the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs, and they are a great group, and I have 7 that attend that class on a regular basis, 7 to 10, and so they are just great students. And moving forward, I have a couple of other programs going on in Kershaw County. We have day camps, and some in-school programming. Our 4-H is currently hosting, we have a 2-day day camp, which is a cooking day camp for kids in the county. And our first date was on November the 21st, and we did a cooking day where we made recipes with leftover Halloween candy. And we talked about the shelf life of candy and where candy fits into our diet on the My Plate scale. And then on our day coming up, we've got on December 21st, we're going to do a cookie and donate day with that group of kids as well. So, and I've also reached out, this is on the next dot right here, I reached out to the Continuing Learning Center, CLC in Camden, and they are looking at doing a gardening project there with us in 4-H, but it will probably be over the spring. And I'm looking at starting a club, a 4-H club at Lugoff Elgin High School with the special needs there. My contact is teacher Ashley Middleton, and she's great. They're looking at starting gardening, and they want to do nutrition and cooking. And so we're just getting past the paperwork stage and moving forward with that. And then I've also worked with ATEC, the Applied Technology Campus here, and we actually did embryology in their classroom, and so they got to actually build their own chicken coop, and they got to hatch their own chickens, and now they have producing chickens. So that was a big event for them, and they really enjoyed that. And also another thing I want to talk about is the shooting sports club that we are currently working on getting started here in Kershaw County. The 4-H shooting sports is very near and dear to my heart. I worked with Rick Willie as an intern of his a couple of years ago, and Kershaw County is great. They are very interested in doing a shooting sports club. So I've talked with a couple of parents that are interested in volunteering with me, and so we are just looking at moving forward with that, and there's a lot of things we need to check off our list before we can continue, but yes, and we also hope to expand that club. Currently, right now, I am certified in shotgun, and we look to expand our club in the future to air rifle, and archery for the kids. So just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Isabella Burkett, and I'm a 4-H'er here in Kershaw County. I am the founder and president of the Kershaw County 4-H Clover Club, and last year we brought in about 30 new 4-H members to Kershaw County. Each month we kind of cover a different aspect of 4-H, whether it be poultry or healthy lifestyles, which is cooking, or robotics. Really, it's the things we can learn about in 4-H are endless. We also do service projects each month, so after we get done learning something new, we give back to the community. This is also my second year serving on the South Carolina 4-H State Team Council, where, as Midlands Regional Representative, where we plan statewide events, camps, and go to speaking engagements across South Carolina. 4 years ago, I joined my first 4-H club, and I served as secretary for 2 years and president for 1. During my last 4 years in 4-H, I've been given many wonderful leadership opportunities that I would not have been able to get anywhere else. From leading my club to teaching second graders that donkeys don't lay eggs, and about other various livestock, running camps for both elementary and high school students, and giving a presentation to President Clements of Clemson University and his class of Clemson faculty, just to name a few. 4-H has played a huge role in shaping me into who I am today, giving me skills that no other organization has been able to give me. Without it, I would not be able to stand in front of you and speak. I've gained many friendships, not only in South Carolina, but across the country while I was able to go to Washington, D.C. this past January and learn about agriculture. And it has just given me a lifetime of memories that no other organization has been able to give me. So I would like to thank you guys for having me today and for your continued support of 4-H in Kershaw.
Well done, well done. Comments? Mr. Bozard?
Ms. Bean, is Mr. DeWitt going to stay in the area for a while?
Yes, sir. He's not planning on going anywhere.
Okay, he and I was working on something and it wasn't finished. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere.
Mr. Tucker?
Kind of selfish question, huh?
Mr. Tucker, do you have
Yes,
a question?
Two things. One is you guys are familiar that I know Lugoff Elgin right now is already up and running on the archery clay shooting that you probably can partner with. Camden High is trying to do it, so it might be of interest that you contact Dan Matthews or Worth over there at Lugoff Elgin just so you can leverage your resources. And I think North Central may be interested in trying to get one started as well. And then I want to know those other names that's behind you because I see some important faces that you didn't introduce.
The one I did not introduce that everyone should know, should. If you haven't called our office, you need to, and the first person you will speak to is Gila Holland.
That's right.
She will get you to the right place.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jones, others? Anyone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. Don't sit down yet, please. Mr. Rick Willie, thank you for what you do. You've got a good organization. You've organized pretty well. It's obviously to see. And Miss Isabel, you absolutely represent everything that's good about 4-H. I mean, that just really, really hits me in the heart to hear you speak about what it's meant to you and how it's helped you throughout the past few years. And I just want to thank you so much for coming here and sharing that with us. And Miss Sarah, you're organized, very well organized. I really appreciate you bringing this before us and sharing exactly what 4-H does. I have a question. C.R. Miles, does he participate any with you guys? I know he was big in 4-H for a while. Okay, well, he's a former county council member and a good friend of mine, so I'm glad I gave him a shout out so that he can watch it and get embarrassed now that he hasn't been involved. But listen, thank you very much. This is what I enjoy about what I do. It's when I hear you folks come up here and give that type of information to us. So thank you very much. I am a big fan of 4-H. Thank you.
Side note, I didn't mention the orange folders you got have some flyers in the left-hand pocket that relate to 4-H, and the right-hand pocket some flyers on some previous and some upcoming programs. And it is orange.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
What color is it?
Yeah, excuse me. Mr. Jones, you still have the floor. Go ahead.
I just want you to know my wife's blood runs orange.
Yeah.
She's a good person.
Thank you. I'll tell her you said that.
All right, and who's going to win against Notre Dame, Clemson? Huh?
I'm not going to brag, but Clemson.
Okay, thank you very much, and have a great holiday. That was a real joy to hear that.
Thank you very much.
We move now to the second public presentation, Duke Energy update on the Wateree River management. Our good friend Rick Duran. Come up, Rick.
Mr. Chairman, Council, first of all, before they walk out the door, I mean, it's really exciting. We always talk about the younger generation, don't we? And then you'll get young folks like that up at the microphone, and you meet them, and you go, you know what? Our future is going to be just fine.
Amen.
So that is that's just a good feeling. But anyway, I am Rick Duran. I'm the Vice President of Local Government and Community Relations for Duke Energy in South Carolina. And we're here today to talk about the Catawba Wateree. We've already heard about a tremendous asset in the Catawba River. And of course, part of that tremendous asset has got to be Lake Wateree as well. And my company is proud to manage the 220 miles that makes up the Catawba Wateree system. But we're also not fooling anybody. We also know that there are times, like last month, that we make a few folks upset on that live on the lake. And as a matter of fact, if you live on the lake today, you're already noticing the water's up again today, as we have started to spill on Lake Wateree. So we feel like now is a very good time, thanks to the chairman inviting us down, to talk about exactly how do we manage Wateree and how do we manage the system as a whole. It's hard to understand, but I think we can simplify it and really help folks get a better grasp. I'm proud to be on our hydro strategy team. I've been on there for at least 13 years now. And I think the key word here is team. No one person makes a decision on the decisions we make when we manage the system. It is a team. But today, I'm excited that I'm able to bring to you Ms. Lynn Dunn. Lynn is our chief hydro strategist. So as you all well know, you can be in a team concept, but at the end of the day, somebody has to make the call. And Lynn is the person that makes that call. So if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I would like to yield the microphone to her to do the presentation.
Absolutely, and thanks for coming tonight. Lynn, please.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to you this evening.
If you bring the mic a little closer. Thank you.
Okay. On the slide that you can see, we have the Catawba-Wateree River, which consists of 225 river miles from Lake James all the way down to Lake Wateree. It is located in both North Carolina and South Carolina. And on the left, you can see the river basin and the actual counties that it's located in. The Catawba-Wateree drainage basin is more than 3 million acres. And the area, the drainage basin between Lake Wateree up to Lake Wylie and including Charlotte runoff is 1.1 million acres. The Catawba-Wateree River Basin is managed as a system, and Duke Energy does not manage the river basin as one reservoir. We have to operate it as a system. We have ungated spillways, and the way this works is when we have more water flow coming into the reservoir than what we can pass through our turbines, the water has to flow over the dam, and that is the way, the dam is designed for the water to overflow. We also, you notice a typo up there, it's supposed to say gated, but we also have gated spillways. Lake Norman and Lake Wylie, which are two of our largest reservoirs, contain spillway gates. These reservoirs are not allowed to go above 100. 100 represents full pond. So when we have inflows that are higher than what we can pass through our turbines, then we have to open the spillway gates to pass those flows. So the lake levels can't go above 100 at gated facilities. On the Catawba-Wateree River system, Lake Hickory, Lake Norman, Lake Wylie, Fishing Creek Reservoir, Cedar Creek Reservoir all have floodgates. So one of the reasons for the discussion tonight was the November rain event, which caused Lake Wateree to spill. The diagram you see was provided to me by a Duke Energy meteorologist, and the circled area is North and South Carolina, and right in the middle you can see the red, and according to the legend on the right, this is between 5 and 8 inches of rainfall during this period between November 9th and November 16th, and in particular, November 12th through the 15th were the rainfall days. When we are prepping for our storms, several things go into consideration, such as preparing. Is a drawdown needed? Do we have time to do a drawdown? How are we going to systematically release the water from reservoir to reservoir to minimize safety and property risk? And also, a lot of communication goes into prepping for the storms. Also, I'd like for you to take into consideration 90 days prior to November 25th, this image also provided by Duke Energy meteorologists. 90 days prior to November 25th, August through October, this part of the river basin, the lower Catawba, received between 15 and 25 inches of rainfall. And in addition to that, since November 25th, there has probably been an addition of 5 to 6 inches of rainfall already received in the lower Catawba Basin from November 25th through this past weekend for the winter storm. The chart you see on the left is the lake level. 100 represents full pond. And then there's the dates across the bottom for the month of November. And as you can see, Lake Wateree is noted by the green line. Lake Wateree lake level was lower than Lake James and Lake Norman prior to that rain event. Because the lower Catawba River Basin received more rain than the upper, that is why Lake Wateree spilled. And Lake James didn't. And of course, Lake Norman can't because it can't go above 100. Next slide.
I'd like to come back to this slide during the discussion.
Okay.
Because that's the issue. Thank you.
On this slide, this graph shows the past 18 months. Lake Wateree has spilled 2 other times prior to the November rain event. If you go back to last year, September, when Irma was forecast to hit our area and kept going south, we pulled Lake Wateree down, but of course we didn't get the rainfall, so it was allowed to come back up. We had enough water in the river system for it to come back up to target. Back in May, Memorial Weekend, Tropical Storm Alberto came through, and it caused spilling at Lake Wateree then. And then when Florence came through, we had enough time to prepare. Most hurricanes, we know about these, 7 to 10 days in advance. Might have a spaghetti of tracks on the radar, but it was forecast to give 9 to 12 inches of rain in the lower Catawba River Basin. So we had plenty of time to pour the reservoir down. However, the majority of the rain was in the upper, and so it did give us more time to pull it down. We had minimal spilling with that rain event. With Hurricane Michael, we didn't have any spilling. However, having a saturated ground and between 15, 25 inches of rainfall over the last 3 months, the rainfall that we had in November, it did cause spilling and different kind of storm. It's not a hurricane that's out there 7 to 10 days in advance. It's something that you learn about in 3 days. During the time of spilling, we had all available units online to pass all the flows. In the future, it is required by our FERC license that we make modifications to Lake Wateree Dam in order for it to pass an extra 10,000 CFS. Right now it is in the design phase, the planning stage. They don't have the exact design of what it's going to be, whether it's going to be gates, whether it's going to be a rubber dam. However, it is required by our license to make this modification, and it is required to be completed by March of 2026. Some myths versus truths for the Catawba Wateree floods. Duke Energy manages flooding events differently on the North Carolina lakes than the South Carolina lakes. The truth is, management fundamentals are exactly the same. The differences from lake to lake arise from lake-specific factors such as gated versus ungated, location, amounts of rain, and shoreline topography. Another myth is these lakes were designed for flood control, but Duke Energy doesn't operate that way. Lake Hartwell is a good example of a flood control reservoir. Their normal target levels are lower and provide much more unused water storage capacity. The Catawba Wateree Lake's target storage is closer to full pond, providing some ability to help manage modest flooding events. And the last myth that I have on here is Duke Energy waits too long to begin drawing down reservoirs when a storm is approaching. Forecasting actual inflow from an approaching storm is complex and not an exact science. Duke Energy balances preparatory drawdowns with the possibility the storm will miss the river basin to avoid an unintentional water shortage. So the million-dollar question is, why can't Duke Energy tell how high the lakes will get before the storm arrives? How much is it going to rain? Will it rain the same everywhere? How fast will it rain? How fast is the storm moving? How wet is the ground? Have we been dry for 4 weeks? How long will it take for the water to reach the river? And then you have to explain these answers for the 3 million plus acres in the drainage basin. And so the fact is, the high water impacts cannot be realistically estimated until the rain has finished and the stream flows are no longer rising. And it is open for questions if you have questions.
Very thorough. Rick, thanks for bringing Lynn all the way down here. I'd like to see if the councilmen have questions. Anybody have questions or comments?
Sure, Mr.
Connell?
CFS, is that cubic feet per second?
Cubic feet per second.
So you've got about 7 or 8 years to figure out how you're going to facilitate that additional flow?
Well, we don't have that long because it has to be completed by 2026.
Okay, all right. When do you anticipate having the plan that will be submitted, just so we can?
It could be 2 more years before we actually have the designs.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when you look at something like because if you've been talking about this, you've been talking about the bladder dam for years, right? Well, if you remember, it took us years to actually get together with our license. So our license at the time, about the only technology that existed would be a bladder dam. So now the FERC, what they're allowing us in our relicensing is, now that technologies have changed, they're allowing us to go back and look at new technologies, not just the bladder dam. So the key is we have to still release that 10,000 CFS. We need to be able to do that. But there might be a better way. Floodgates, for instance. We might be able to put in a floodgate that could do that job a lot easier. So that design phase is not only about designing, but also trying to figure out exactly what technology we want to use. And then, Lynn, if you'll allow me, she did mention that that you could not let floodgates have water go over the top of them. What she did not mention, I want to make sure everybody is aware of, that is not a Duke Energy requirement. That is a FERC federal requirement. So if you think about it, floodgates are exactly that. It allows you to lift the gates so you can better control and better manage the flow of water. If we allow water to flow over the top of our gates on our largest reservoirs, we can no longer mechanically pull those gates up. So we have, in essence, lost all ability to manage that flow. So that's why the federal government tells us you will not allow that gate to come up, because I know that's the call I get all the time. Watery's going up, and I just drove over the 200 bridge, and you've got the gates open there. That makes no sense. Well, it actually does make sense from a water management standpoint. It just doesn't make sense if you're standing in the yard where the water's coming up.
Thank you, Mr. Connell. Mr. Tucker?
Explain to me, Ms. Lynn, the difference with Lake Norman and Lake Watery as far as controlling the water, because you kept saying that it couldn't go over 100. Then when I look at your chart, we're at 103.75 during that time. And I understand some of the reasons, but what are they doing different that maybe we can do where we won't have that same issue?
One difference is the size of Lake Norman has a lot more storage capacity than Lake Watery. Lake Norman is probably 3 times the size of Lake Watery. So the storage capacity is one thing. Lake Norman has floodgates, so it can't go above 100. If we get to 100, we have to open a floodgate. Lake Watery does not have floodgates. Lake Watery has an OG-type spillway, which is, it's designed to overflow when there is more water coming into the reservoir than what we can pass through the turbines.
Talking about 520 miles of shoreline. That's more shoreline than the North Carolina and South Carolina beaches combined. So just the capacity is really, I think, what Lynn's trying to drive home. If to give, is Mountain Island Lake bigger or smaller than Watery? and so it's smaller. But to give you an idea, just 1 inch out of Lake Norman raises Mountain Island Lake about 10 inches. So that's how much larger that capacity is. So Norman's very important to us. I mean, very important to us, because it is the largest reservoir on our system. That's the lake that, in essence, and if I'm overspeaking, please stop me, that is very important that we manage it well, because it's going to control what we can take from up north, and it's going to control what we're going to release down south. And everybody knows where Watery is on the chain.
Other comments?
Yes.
Mr. Arledge?
You spoke of a bladder dam, and then at one point you spoke of a rubber dam. Are those the same things, or?
They're basically the same thing. They act the same way. It's with air, filled with air. They're both the same thing.
And you comparing that to a gated, possibly in the future?
There are talks about gates. They have not decided on one design. They're just in the planning phase now of what design they will go with.
Other comments? Mr. Jones first. Oh, you okay, Mr. DeBose.
I just have a question, and I might be all wrong about this, but it seems to me, and I'm dealing with the wastewater permitting below the dam in the Watery River, and I believe, or have reason to believe, that the dissolved oxygen content coming out of Lake Watery is an issue for permitting, because the water comes through the turbines from the bottom of the dam versus the ability to get it off the top, which results in the Congaree permitting below the dam being far less, Watery being far less than the Congaree because of the way. Is that an issue being addressed at all? The minimum daily flows and the oxygen content in the river below the dam?
At this time, we do not have any requirements to meet the state standards for the dissolved oxygen at Lake Watery. We have a modification to requirement to put in a minimum flow unit at Lake Watery, and when that modification is completed, we have to abide by the state standards for the dissolved oxygen.
But it will change.
So it will change.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Is it's a life above and below the dam, and when we go to a higher continual flow instead of periodic flow, it can only help the wildlife below the dam. Which is part of the issue that I have with the Watery River. And by the way, it's not the Catawba Watery River Basin, it is the Watery River Basin. Thank you very much. But Mr. DeBose is touching on an issue where you have my unqualified support for new turbines. And to Mr. Connell's question, will the new turbines also be a part of that design when you come in with a design for gates versus bladder dam?
The new turbine is a separate project, and it will be completed prior to the dam modifications.
Do you have a rough time frame?
I believe December 2022 is the deadline for Watery minimum flow unit.
Okay, that's what I had heard too, and that's great because a lot of fishermen will be very happy about that, and because it provides a higher level of water, and you don't have these shoals developing where fish are trapped and are killed in that regard. Thank you.
Don't quote me, but I believe that's...
No, I understand. Go back to the other chart. I don't have a chart number. Back up, that one right there. The one that should read Watery Reservoir letters. Yeah, this is Mr. Tucker's question and mine too. Look, nobody's sharpshooting you. You're a professional, and you wouldn't be here unless you really were fully qualified. And we respect that Duke is our partner in economic development, right, Rick? And you've helped us a lot. You're also our partner with those linemen that you put out on cold, dark, icy nights, and you get the electricity restored with an amazing alacrity. We're just very proud of you and your partnership with us, and the fact that you also provide grants to our county. But I've got to say, part of getting really good at your job is having the habit of objective, critical self-examination. And in looking at that peak and others, if you had the choice to make it again, would you have maybe dropped water levels sooner faster or over a longer period. What do you learn from these charts, and are we getting better at making these calls?
When we prepared for this storm, we had all units available at Watery Hydro online. And we prepared as far in advance as we could. This storm, I believe, was 3 days in advance is when we knew about this storm.
Yeah.
The majority of the rainfall from the storm fell in the lower Catawba Basin. There were reports that stream flows below Cedar Creek Hydro were higher during the November rainfall than they were during Florence and Michael. Those are stream flows that we can't see, and we have no control of anything going into Lake Wateree below Cedar Creek Hydro Station.
Exactly. Yeah. Other questions, Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Ms. Lynn, Mr. Rick, Ken DeBose, he's covered everything I was concerned about, so I don't have to go back over that. I would like to say thank you for being here tonight. Very good presentation. Very worthwhile. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Rick.
Other comments?
I have another question, Mr.
Yeah, Mr. Ben, go ahead.
Thinking of the folks that be using the river south of the dam, whenever new technology gets implemented, whatever it is, a gate system or otherwise, does that additional flow, 10,000 cubic feet per second, is that gradual, or, I mean, we're talking about a quick rise in the river level, and this is a period in time in which we're trying to increase recreation on the river, kayaking and the like. I mean, do you have, for other dams that are like that, do you have warning systems, or how do you account for people that would be recreating in non-motorized vehicles or boats? And
downstream of the dam?
Yeah, yeah.
At our gated facilities, we have horns that are required to sound before a gate is opened. Just like at Lake Wateree, at Wateree Hydro Station, before a unit comes online, you will hear a horn. There will also be a horn that will sound before the bladder dam or the gate or anything is open to pass those flows.
Okay, well, and I've been up there and heard the horn before. It's quite loud, and you notice it if you're near the dam. I'm thinking of, in particular, we have a river parcel, which Mr. Zobel stood up and talked about tonight, which at some point in the future we intend to improve and make accessible to the public. And I'm just wondering, would it be wise for this council or Duke or others to try to have a remote warning system if the river level is going to increase that quickly?
I think it's very fair to say that if you have any safety concern downstream, before we get into the point of implementation, when we're in that planning phase, we want to sit down and meet with you, because your constituents' safety, our customers' safety, is first and foremost. So yes, we're willing to have that conversation.
Sure, and I guess I'm also asking, what is best practice right now? So just the horn at the dam is what you use for the other gated facilities?
The horns are the best practice, and I think, of course, what comes above, since those have always been gated, those horns have always been there. The people that live there, it becomes generational. People understand what it means. Down here, it's going to be a new concept. There's going to be an educational piece to that to get people to better understand exactly what's going to happen. And I think that's where we can have a partnership with the county, with emergency management, with the sheriff's office, to work on the educational aspects of what these changes mean.
Okay, thanks for that. It just seems that since Lake Wateree is the last in the system, there's just a natural magnification effect that happens from little changes all the way, and I just want to make sure we account for it.
Yeah, and the good news is, once we engineer it, we're going to know what those changes are going to look like. So we're going to know if it's going to be radical, how, so it's not like we're just going to put it in there and go, I wonder what's going to happen now, and you lift the gate, right? We're going to know what's going to happen, and we'll be able to react to that from a safety standpoint long before we utilize it.
And that's a discussion we'll be able to have in about 2 years or so, roughly.
Certainly.
Okay.
And hopefully I'll still be around to have that
discussion.
Sure,
absolutely.
Yeah. If you guys could put in a plug with my boss, I'd appreciate it.
Thanks, Rick.
Al, please, Mr. Bozard.
I think he's referring to 1.5 or 2 foot of water rise, just like that. But the design on that dam down there and those turbines won't allow that.
Exactly.
So you've got
So,
no problem
yeah,
there,
so
Ben.
I'm not so sure. That's why I'm saying, once we engineer it, we'll know what kind of a quick rise we're gonna have. And I'm not so sure we're talking about 2 feet like that.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah. Thank you. We've talked above the dam, which impacts homeowners on both sides of the river up to Fairfield County as well. I don't think anybody here has property on the lake, but believe me, we hear about it. And we've talked about below the dam. And the only thing I would ask is you continue your practice of keeping us informed through our administrator and county staff, both for safety and for advice to our residents. The last thing was, again, back to what Mr. DeBose was talking about, water quality. Down along, there are at least 4 wastewater producers into that water system below the dam: Packet, Milliken, Camden, Kershaw County, and Vista. And so low water levels are impacted by the sewage that has been treated and put in there, and that affects the water quality. And if it does badly, then it kills fish and impacts the wildlife along that river. So going to a uniform flow is just a great idea. And I just want to reiterate again, let's keep the lines of communication open. That's our river. That's the Wateree River Basin. And try to say that next time, all right? Other comments? Thank you very much. And Lynn, are you headed back tonight?
Yes, sir.
If you bought a house here, this would be home.
Rick, Lynn, thank you guys.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
And,
Thank you.
And I forgot to apologize in the beginning. I have got a horrible ear infection, cannot hear out of my left ear, so if I sound like I've been yelling at you, my apologies. And we're proud to manage the Wateree Basin.
Thank you very much.
You said
Thank
it
you, sir.
correct.
Safe journey home, both of you. We move now to the next item on the agenda, a resolution approving the transfer of an inducement agreement, millage rate agreement, lease agreement. It's at tab C, and I'll ask the administrator to introduce the topic. Sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, we have tonight a request from the company that we have mostly known as Covidian and Tyco International, Kendall, a request to extend their FILO that was first issued in 1998. We have with us tonight Mr. Gary Morris, who represents the company. Essentially, they are asking to keep the FILO and extend it for another amount of time. Gary, I think you're still here. Oh,
Yeah, he's right here. Hey, Gary. Yeah, we'll introduce the topic, and then we'll have you speak, Gary. So with that, can we have a motion to approve the resolution?
So much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Tucker, a second? Second from Mr. Gardner. For discussion, Vic, you want us to open up with Gary first?
Or I can go a little more in detail.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead in some detail, and then we'll hear from Gary.
Okay, sure. Essentially, back in '98, Tyco signed a FILO with Kershaw County. They committed to invest $16,500,000 to the facility. They received a 6% 20-year FILO at that time. Later on that year, it was transferred in title to Kendall from Tyco. Kendall later changed its name to Covidian, and now Covidian has transferred its interest to KPR US. Over the length of the FILO, the company has exceeded its $16,500,000 commitment by investing a total of $22 million, almost $600,000 to date. And very vibrant company, active part of our community, one of our long-term textile mill that we're quite proud of. And so that's kind of some of the background.
All right, very good. Let's open up to questions, or would you like to open up with a statement? Members of council, what questions do you have?
I'd like to hear what he's got to say.
Yeah, go ahead, please, Gary.
Well, the reason for the extension, or the request for the extension, is this is an old fee in lieu of tax transaction, which means it's a lease purchase transaction, which means the county right now owns the assets. And under a fee in lieu, the assets are put in service in different years. And so the company, which is part of the Cardinal Health umbrella, is trying to figure out what assets are where. And in instead of having them come off 1 year at a time over the next 4 years, the company's saying, can we put it all in so it all comes off at one time? So we can go back to the county and get a bill of sale, get all the documents necessary, terminate lease and everything else, and do it all at one time instead of having to do it over a period of years. So that's the reason for the request for the extension. And it's 4 years to allow those assets that are placed in service to all be extended until they all come off. Now, one thing that was requested, usually with these deals start off with a low millage rate, and but in this case, the county administrator has requested that the millage rate be increased to the current millage rate. So the company would be paying property taxes or fee in lieu of property taxes based on the current millage rate. Then in 4 years, it'll benefit the company to have it all come off at one time.
And the net for us, Vic, is?
They're currently paying $101,000 a year in property taxes. That will remain the same through the 4 years, at which point then it'll revert to the non-fee tax.
Non-fee tax. So at the industrial millage rate.
I'm sorry, did I say that wrong?
108,000.
Okay.
At the end of 4 years.
I'm confused.
All right.
Okay.
Yes, please.
All right, Mr. Tucker, let's follow up with Mr. Jones has begun. Mr. Tucker, go ahead.
Y'all got my eyes looking like I don't know what up here. So we're collecting 101 now, and then in 4 years, what is it going to be?
189.
189.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Carpenter, is this normal practice? Have we done this before since you've been here?
Yes, sir. You may recall that Invista was under an old fee, and
Right.
we had to kind of work through details to get our name off of the title.
We owed them a lot of money at one time.
And so this is similar in that they're trying to essentially get our name off of the title as well and get all these various things that have happened over the years. Again, it goes back 30 years. So try to get all that cleared up in a 4-year period. So going forward, they just have a single relationship with the county.
How many employees do y'all have?
I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that at this time.
Roughly?
Taking a guess. I hate to hazard a guess. I'm sure they've got maybe a few hundred out there, but I don't know for sure. They've got several facilities across the state.
I'm talking about in Kershaw County.
Yeah, and I realize that, so the numbers get mixed up. I haven't really talked to them about the number of employees. But I do know this, the employment level will not vary. It'll stay what it is right now. There's no plans to decrease employment or anything like that.
Things running pretty strong for you guys right now?
They're doing well. I mean, there's no plans for expansion at the Kershaw facility, but there are no plans to decrease or take equipment out or anything.
Mr. Connell.
Whenever we talk about assets, does that just mean the actual property itself, any equipment, or what are the assets?
It's equipment and real estate. And what right now the county owns an addition to that building. In the old days, what we used to do is we would divide the building and we would convey a part of the building to the county. The county would hold title to that part of the building. It's actually a deed that was conveyed.
Right.
And so they hold part of the building, and then they hold several $1,000 worth of equipment.
Okay, and that leads to my follow-up question, which would be for Mr. DeBose. Does it improve our risk portfolio at all to not have these things owned by the county and actually over to the private entity if there's injuries, malfunctions, spills, or anything like that?
Well, in the case of Invista, we wanted to get off the title for reasons of permitting. They were having new permitting, and they were putting us on the permitting, and the permitting involved a lot of remediation. I don't believe that applies to this piece of property.
I frankly have talked to the company about converting it to a simplified FILO, but they're still trying to grasp. The company is so large, they've got different departments that are trying to grasp how this all works. So that's why they asked for the extension, so they can kind of figure it all out, how it all works.
But this is different, Mr. Connell, than in Vista. And Vista, you know, had DuPont sold several times. And that was where the county did not want to be part of the permitting, new permits. I'm talking about wastewater, remediation, all of that. So that's, we got off that. I think you might be familiar, I think you're familiar with that.
Yes.
Yes.
And that would have also, with DuPont, reduced our exposure on CERCLA and RCRA environmental issues, or?
No question about it. We said we don't want any part of the permits.
Okay.
And the way we could get out of it was to, we converted the fee in lieu of tax agreement. I think Mr. Morris might have been involved in that.
I was.
Yeah. He's the one that helped us do that in the case of Investa. This is different, though. Haven't been asked to be a part of any permits in this case. This is disposal permits and remediation permits, too. Remediation meaning cleanup.
Okay, but so how we have this one arranged, you're totally comfortable with, and doesn't increase any risk and actually might reduce it?
Yeah, these folks are saying, are saying, we want to do it all at one time.
All right.
Well, if you'd look to Section 4, what we're doing is extending this for a period of, I think, something like 4 years.
4 years.
4 years.
So that the company can figure out what to do about all this.
Correct.
So this is an extension. This does not convey any property or anything of that nature.
Doesn't change anything. It changes the millage, increases the millage.
Yeah, so it's not conveying property. It's just extending and then increasing the millage rate. So the company can figure out what to do with this asset. Is that correct?
That's basically correct.
Okay. Is that helpful? Jimmy, go right ahead.
Forgive me, please, but what do you do for the company?
I'm a lawyer.
Okay,
I'm an outside lawyer.
I thought you were.
I draft the documents and kind of advise them on how a fee in lieu of tax transaction works.
Well, that helps me understand why you didn't or could not answer the question about how many employees. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but I think we ought to, it wouldn't hurt for us to have a little paper to council about what the net employee and economic impact of this old company. I used to go fishing in that lake. All right, Mr. Jones, go ahead.
I may finish. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. DeBose, you're telling me you're comfortable with this?
I am saying I'm comfortable with this, and it doesn't change it. It just makes it easier on us and easier on them. And I don't see any environmental issues that we're dealing with, as in the case of Invista.
Okay. Other comments?
I just want to say this is
Jamie?
the reason why we don't do these old feelers anymore like this. This stuff can get real complicated real quick for everyone.
Well, the state doesn't do them anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
1998, so.
Yeah.
I agree, Mr. Tucker.
Yeah. Others? I think it's good for the business and good for the county. That's the way I read this, and I'm going to vote in favor. Other comments? Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And Mary, it passes unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah. All right, we move now to a series of ordinances. Item number 1 under the ordinances is the third reading of an ordinance by Kershaw County redesignating the Alpha Center Behavioral Health Center as the Kershaw County designated alcohol and drug abuse counseling and therapy agent, repealing a prior inconsistent ordinance. It's at tab D and on the screen. Mr. Carpenter, introduce it, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have before you tonight for third reading. The ordinance is previously read in title. Council has previously passed this unanimously on 2 separate readings. Essentially, this would clear up inconsistent language in the old ordinance and replace it with language that is consistent with current law.
All right, can we have a motion to approve on third reading?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the third reading of the ordinance for Kershaw County Council redesignating the Alpha Center Behavior Health Clinic.
Mr. Tucker, a second?
Second that.
Second from Mr. Bozard. Discussion.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I will abstain from voting due to the fact that my wife is the deputy director of the Alpha Center.
Yep, right. Got it. Other comments? It's a point of pride for our county that we have the Alpha Center, and all they do for us becomes almost literally a matter of life and death for what they do for our county and for the region. This cleans things up. Any other discussion? With that, we move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand, and it's unanimous, and with Mr. Jones abstaining for reasons stated. We move to the next item. It is item number 2. Third reading of an ordinance by Kershaw County authorizing the execution of the amended, restated intergovernmental agreement to use and maintain the CCTC facilities. It's at tab E, and I believe it's up on the screen. Yep. With that, do we have a motion to approve?
So made.
Mr. Connell, a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Arledge. Any discussion? We've heard from Madam Executive Director. Seeing there is no discussion, we move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous and passes on the third reading. Thank you, Amy. Item number 3 is the third reading of an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of not exceeding $6,500,000 aggregate principal amount of general obligation bonds at tab F. Let's hear from Mr. Carpenter, and then we'll move to a series of motions. Sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have before you tonight for third reading a bond ordinance. The bond ordinance has previously been discussed by council on 2 separate readings with unanimous votes. The bond would provide for up to $6.5 million for the purpose of rehabbing and extending the county's current sewer transportation system.
Very good. Can we have a motion to approve on third reading? Mr. Tucker.
I make a motion that we approve third reading on our bonds of $6.5 million.
Do we have a second?
Second.
A second from Mr. Gardner. Mr. Tucker, I believe you had an amendment.
Yes, sir, I do, Mr. Chairman, and I think you guys may have it before you. It was passed out by our attorney, and I would like to, if you look, it's in blue down there on page 2.
Let's make sure everybody's got it.
Yes, sir, that's what I'm doing.
On the second page, by your thumb down
And
there. Everybody got it? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Tucker.
And it reads, prior to the issuance and delivery of any series of bonds authorized by this ordinance, County Council shall adopt a resolution specifying the maximum final maturity of such series of bonds by resolution of County Council. The authorized officer is directed to include such resolution in the reading of proceedings created in connection with the issuance of the bonds.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Arledge. And by way of clarification, Mr. Carpenter, can you introduce our attorney who introduced this language to us previously at our last meeting?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Gary Pope is the county's bond attorney on this issue.
Okay, very good. Let me now defer it. We'll bring you forward if the council has questions.
Mr. Chairman.
I'll first defer to Mr. Tucker. Will you yield to Mr. Connell?
Yes, sir, I will.
Go ahead.
Just a point of order. I see a couple of other, some inconsequential, some consequential provisions. Do we need to vote on each one of those, or can we take them as a whole?
Let's
I think he's
make a
referring to
ruling.
page 15
Help
and
me on
16.
that.
Mr. Chairman and members of council, I believe the amendment can be that it be amended in accordance with the handout handed you, which has, that's the only substantive provision in it. But yes,
the rest of it.
Other issues are not as substantive, but are in there.
Okay.
So be in accordance with this handout.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I would like to amend my amendment to include the page 15 and page 16, and I'll be happy to read those if you like.
I think.
I'd second that.
Okay.
Okay, we have a second and discussion. Please, gentlemen. I think we're going to have to vote 3 times on this thing. Mr. DeBose, I'm going to get even with you.
Well, he substituted, I think. He has a new amendment. His first amendment is gone. He has a new amendment now.
Right.
All right, discussion. Essentially, I understand it, subject to correction, is this tells us that we passed this motion, the original motion, but the amendment tells us, the council, to come back at some later date based on the language that Mr. Tucker introduced. Correct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Well, this gives, we have a new council member come January, so it'll give them a chance to get involved and make decisions. Is he out there somewhere?
Yeah, he's out there.
Hiding in the back.
Oh, preacher man. So we can have dialogue with a new council member as well as see what's best and what's best practice and available at that time through our bond attorney. So, and it keeps council involved of the process.
Other discussion? So the period of the bond and so on will come before us at a future date. Do we know roughly when that would be, Vic?
That's approximately 9 months.
So September-ish.
Yeah, August, September. And again, the purpose of this would be that when the bonds are put out for bid and the bids are received, then council would be able to make the final decision on which term you wish to go for.
And as we discussed, also an assurance of the cash flow from the agreement that we have.
Yes.
Very good. Okay. All right. Other discussion? All right. I'm going to navigate this series of motions. We have a substituted motion that has been made and seconded, and on that, based on the handout in front of you and the language that's been outlined, I would ask you to vote on this thing. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous, and the original motion is amended. So we go back now to the third reading as amended on at tab F, item number 3. And can we now move to vote on the amendment, the motion as amended? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it passes unanimously. Mary, on the third reading. Thank you, and I wish you a Merry Christmas and a safe journey back. Yeah, good to see you. We move now to new business. The first one is item number 1, an airfield drainage improvement project. Gentlemen, it's at tab G. We're being asked to vote on a bid to go forward with these improvements. Mr. Carpenter, can you lead off?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, for about 2 years we have been discussing the issue of the drainage situation at the airport out in East Camden. As these projects go, they're approved by the FAA. The FAA provides 90% of the funds. The state of South Carolina traditionally provides 5% of the funds. The county provides 5% of the funds. Last year, the FAA did not have enough money to get as far down the list, so this project was carried forward to this year. This year it was a high priority, so it was funded by the FAA. We put the money in the budget to make our match. They went out for bid. You see the bids that were received for it. The low bid was by Lindler's Construction from Newberry for $1.693 million. Staff recommends that council accept this bid and award it.
Do we have a motion to accept the bid from Lindler Construction, the staff recommendation as a low bid? Can we have a motion?
So made.
Mr. Connell, a second? Second from Mr. Gardner. Any discussion?
Yes, one question.
Yeah, Mr. Bozard, sir.
Ray Miles offered a chance to bid this and they didn't bid, or what?
Yes, sir.
They was offered a chance.
The bids are put out to everyone. We do our best to make sure that all local contractors are aware of bids whenever we do them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Tucker.
Yes, sir. What's our match or a portion of this that we're?
Our match is $102,924, and we have approximately $118,000 in the budget for the match, just in case it goes up a little.
Thank you.
Yep. Sir.
Quick question. I want to piggyback off of Councilman Al Bozar. So you're saying that we know for a fact C. Ray Miles did get the opportunity to put a bid in or not?
We put out for everyone who's on our bid list, we send them all of our bids.
And he's on the bid list?
As far as I know, yes, sir.
Are there any other locals other than Mr. Miles?
As far as I know, he did. Yes,
he was the only one?
Correct. But I'll follow up for you.
Can you just also detail what we did last night?
Sure.
Recall, gentlemen, we have a very qualified airport committee. I went and met with them about 3 weeks ago, and then we met with them again last night. Vic, would you go through that, the results of that meeting?
The Airport Commission has been involved with this from the beginning. They've been keeping an eye on it. And last night, we presented back to them the results of the bids, and they voted unanimously as well to endorse it and to forward it to County Council for your consideration.
Yeah, Al?
I was on the Airport Commission when this came up. I was on the Airport Commission 8 years, and I've been off 4 years, so we're going back some 12 years trying to get this done. And I'm happy to see it's finally reached an end. because this thing has drawn out way, way past what it should have done. And thank you very much.
It's been a lot of work. I would tell you that there are other items out there. The Airport Commission, I think, has sense of commitment and passion for this project and other projects. And they have told me that they want to come back in and talk to us through the objectives and goals process that we have after our retreat. So we'll hear from them again about how we can maintain our front porch to attract new business and keep that airport vital. Secondly, I will tell you that Mr. Barry Cato has worked very hard on this on behalf of East Camden, and this was very complex. And he has also helped them get an appreciation in the Airport Commission on future projects, from a leaking hangar and things like the fuel service out there, and I believe the doors. So we'll hear more from them in the future. It's a good committee, and we are committed to using them effectively with the young men that give of their time without any pay to provide us advice from that airport. Other comments? Okay, seeing there are none.
I said, Mr. Mahan.
Yeah, please. I'm sorry,
That's okay.
Jimmy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Mr. Carpenter, now where's the money going to come from, the $102,000?
It's in the budget already, in the airport budget.
Thank you.
Okay. You beat Mr. Tucker to the punch there, Jimmy.
No, that's Vic's second time answering that question.
I usually do pretty much all the time.
You're going to get punched.
Other questions and comments? Okay, I think seeing there are none, all those in favor so signify. And Mary, it's unanimous. Thank you very much, and congratulations to Mr. Cato. We move now to other new business. Item number 2, presentation of river parcel concept and proposed phase 1 improvements at tab H. We have Shane here. I'm sure this will be a lively discussion. Mr. Carpenter, help us open it up, and we'll move to a vote.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, back when the budget was discussed and approved, council had set goals for the year, and one of the goals was to begin working on the riverfront parcel. In the budget, I placed a placeholder forward of $400,000. It was not based on anything other than being a placeholder, and after council discussion, council preferred to undesignated it for the river parcel and just put it in the capital reserve for capital projects. So we were also, staff was requested to come back prior to the end of the year and present to council concepts. The concepts were developed based on a number of public meetings. We had 2 public meetings at the recreation center itself with very large turnouts at both of them. We had a public event at the river called Meet Me at the River that had hundreds of people that came out to it. They also participated in ideas and input to the river parcel. Using those ideas and the input from the public sessions and meetings, Morgan Grimble, who's here tonight, with Shane sitting next to him as the architect, came up with a concept for the river. Morgan can explain the total concept on the map you see, the total concept for it, but what I asked them to do is to give us a phase 1 for tonight. The council could look at and see what a phase 1 might look like should council go in that direction.
So on the second page, if you'll scroll, is a cost estimate of $399,489,000. Are you asking for a vote tonight?
I would like a vote, yes, sir.
A vote in approving this and the designation of the money. And then I presume that there would be a further discussion about who would be awarded the contract.
Well, the contract would go out for bid then. So,
okay.
So it is not out for bid. This is still an estimate, construction estimate from Mr. Grimble.
Very good. With that, can we have a motion to approve the project and the cost estimate of some $400,000?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve this cost estimate for our watery park.
Very good. A second, please.
I'll second that.
Second from Mr. Connell. Mr. Tucker, do you want to lead discussion?
I just want to hear from the architect on the drawings in a little bit, but
Yeah.
I will say, just following up on Mr. Steve Zobel's comments, and it's not something that well, of course, we don't have another meeting this year, but this is something that I do want my colleagues to pay close attention to. We do need to finish projects within the recreation area, and I may have a means and ways of doing that, but by 4 I wouldn't hold this project up tonight. I will support it so we can move forward, but I do want that to be our thought process going forward, because we sometimes have a tendency to fall further behind on things that we start and then start new projects, and so I don't want that to happen here. There's some things in each one of our areas that we want to do. There's some stuff that we want to do with the city, and I think that this funding mechanism that I would introduce would be fair to all those areas: recreation and the Elgin area, the Lugoff area, the Camden area, the outskirts area. I think it would be something that we can rely on and complete projects. So,
Thank you. Mr. Connell.
Yeah, I just want to, as a matter of clarification, make sure, so the vote tonight is not that we're allotting or actually budgeting any funds. We're just approving the project that's been recommended to us by the Recreation Commission and acknowledging that that is the cost associated with it.
I think
Phase
it's,
one.
I'm confused.
Is it not already in the budget?
$400,000 is in the budget under the capital budget, and it's listed under that point. If you look at the budget under capital reserves, there's another $400,000 as well for recreation, for the recreation projects that were requested to be dealt with. So there's $400,000 in the budget for the recreation projects, and another $400,000 that is undesignated that was transferred to capital reserves from the placeholder that was put in the budget when presented to council.
So we'd be taking the same 400,000 roughly and moving it back, pointing it back in the direction of.
If you chose to go that direction, the capital reserves would then be designated back to the river parcel for development.
So the motion, as I understood it, is to allocate these funds.
Correct.
Mr. Bozard, go ahead.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yes, sir.
Management on this, I have several questions now. Management of this is going to rest on who?
Ultimately on me.
Sir?
Ultimately on me, but Shane, as the Parks and Rec Director, would have the day-to-day with Pete, providing him backup on issues that Pete could provide good input and advice on.
Okay, I see some items in here. Clearing and grubbing, I'm just going to read off some. Erosion control, general grading, road and stuff. Do we have the expertise to handle this?
In-house?
Yes.
As far as management or as far as doing it ourselves?
Yes.
We've got the expertise for management, and we can do some of it ourselves as well. So these are just construction estimates. When it would go out for bid, it would come back with bid prices. Anything the county could do, we would do that part of it as well. We, generally speaking, we don't do clearing and grubbing. We don't have the equipment to do grubbing. We can do certain clearing. Site grading, we can do rough grading as well. And so we've got our guys in Public Works who are capable of doing that work.
I have asked you several times to let's do some more clearing over there so we can see what the land looks like, which wasn't done. So now we're going to jump into this as proposed right now. And what are we going to do? We're going to take out a bunch of these trees and stuff we've had now and so forth. I'd like to know what the plan is.
And Mr. Grimble can perhaps explain better the details. Very few of the trees on the park property itself would be removed. Basically what you see, with the exception of deadfalls or invasive species that need to be removed, but the trees themselves along the river, along the creek, wouldn't be maintained. Up on the top of the hill, we would anticipate those trees being...
That's what I'm talking about, on top of the hill.
Would anticipate those being removed as part of this process, taking them out. They're mostly very small saplings, scrub, and they would come out as part of it. But the park itself, if you notice, really doesn't include the upper parcel. So the design of the park basically is from the entrance down all the way to the river, and the land to the left towards the Lugoff sign. That's not really incorporated in the plan. That's future land that the county can use for monuments, can use for perhaps buildings, can use for whatever.
Yeah.
There's 2 columns here.
Yes, sir.
Al, at some point, I don't want to interrupt, but at some point, I would like Mr. Grimble to come up and take us through the plan, too.
Okay,
Your
there's-
questions lead right into
Right,
that.
thank you. 'Cause
Go right
that
ahead.
was going to be my next one after this one.
Good.
There's 2 columns here.
Yes, sir.
And I'm looking at Overlook, I'm looking at fishing docks. They're in the column, but there's nothing on the right. So all this, and plus that $300,000 for the amphitheater up there, is not in the right-hand column. So theoretically, this total we have here, $399,000, we can double this, right?
Or more. This is just the first phase. This is the phase designed to get people into the park, to be able to use a kayak and canoe, to have some parking, some paths that are safe and secure. Ultimately, it would look to continue into a finished park with probably 2 paths, an inner and outer, one that was the inner was all out and exposed so people would feel safe, have safety features of cameras and call boxes. The outer one along the river and along the creek would be winding through the trees. It would probably be more natural, so you'd have mixes of boardwalk, you'd have mixes of natural trail surfaces, trying to encourage everyone from moms and seniors to get out there, as well as people who are able to get down and go through the woods and not be concerned about perhaps, being out of public sight and public vision. So a first phase was focusing on those. Other aspects where you see in the first column, not carried over to the second column, those are just estimates of what those might cost us if we continue to that direction.
Okay, you spoke of the first phase, and this is what you're calling this one right now, right?
Yes, sir.
First phase.
Yes, sir.
What is your plans for the second phase?
Why don't we have Mr. Grimble come by and he can tell us?
Well, he hadn't been told what we want to do yet.
Well, if you'd yield, he can tell us what he's done. But if you want to go ahead, go right ahead, please.
I'd like to hear his answer. Don't run off now. We're gonna get to you in just a second. I'd like to hear your answer. And what second is there gonna be a third and fourth phase or what?
What this would allow us to use the park for many, if not most, purposes that we could see it being used for. So it may be several years before council wants to pursue to a second phase. This gets the park usable. Right now, it's there. It can be used to some fashion. This moves us more in a direction where you can have events out there. You can have festivals out there. You can have Yak in the River putting in there and move the kayaks and canoes out of the motorized boat launch area and put it into their own ADA compliant boat landing and launch for kayaks and canoes. So the only thing we're requesting tonight is council consider and approve funding a first phase. After that, phase 2, phase 3, if there would be a phase 3, would be at council's discretion. If council, as a goal, wanted us to continue it, if you didn't, then this would be enough that we could do more than we're able to do.
One more question. The other issues that we have in Parks and Recreation that's not finished yet, do we have the money on hand right now to finish these other projects?
Not every one of them. The Old Armory was probably going to be a 7-figure kind of project.
Oh, boy.
And we don't have the money for that. That was the number one priority, but we're not going to have the money for that probably at any point in the immediate future. Other projects that we have $400,000 in the budget for other projects. We listed it as a combined, we called it Old Armory because that was just the first one, but anything from backstops to turf work to lighting, that $400,000 is really for anything that the Recreation Commission had identified, and it could be going towards those projects.
Okay, I want to make my position clear. I'm for this, okay? But I want to make sure we've got all our answers asked and answered before we take on something like this. And I'm definitely for it. I didn't vote for it originally. I voted against it. But there's so much public interest in this thing, I want to see it go forward, and I want to see it go forward right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With permission of council, let's hear from the planner. And would it help you if we put the charts up, or you want to use the chalk, the soft board here? Okay, that's good enough.
Do you have a laser pointer? Do you have a laser pointer?
Why don't you just use
I got
the
one.
chart right
Hey,
here?
I got one. Just give it back.
All right.
Take it.
I don't think we need to see.
Yeah, I'd like to see the overall plan.
Well, tell us what the phase 1 is, and then we'll go to phase 2 and others after that. Yeah, Al, go right ahead.
On these roads, is there any part of what you've got planned right now, have we got to raise any of these roads to make them good and stable? Has any shots been taken and stuff on them? Okay. All right, we hadn't got that far. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Al, if Mr. Tucker can lead, go ahead.
Just want to make sure that I'm clear. Phase 1, walking trail, whatever it's going to be, hiking trail, bike trail, it's going to come to where the dirt road is. Okay, so it's not the whole loop around the park. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Other comments? Mr. Jones.
You saw me leaning, didn't you? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Shane, you're the rec director. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Phase 1, as I see it, is everything that's listed on this sheet, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's $399,000, 480. Yeah. ATAX money did purchase the original purchase was done with ATAX money, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And where, and of course, I know it's been said, but for the record, where is the money to improve coming from?
It's coming from county reserves.
Okay. And who prioritizes the recreational needs?
That was the Rec Commission when we actually presented the master plan in August. That group was the one that did that.
Well, this one fell very short from being in the top 5. I think it was somewhere up between what? 7 or 8?
Somewhere around there,
9.
yes, sir.
Okay. Have the other recreational needs identified by the Recreation Commission been taken care of?
That's what Mr. Carpenter was referencing to, the money that was set aside for those other projects as far as backstops, extending fences on baseball fields, getting the temporary fence that we need for tournaments, getting our pool ADA compliant as far as the changing rooms and showers. So the money that was set forth in the budget for that, those projects will go forward.
Will that complete all those projects?
It will not complete all those projects.
You know, you and I have spoke about this. I was trying to find out what was outstanding, and I think it was pretty much agreed with Joe Eastman and yourself when I had a conversation with you that we probably had $4,000 to $5,000 worth of work we needed to complete in the West Complex, and $200,000 to $300,000 worth of work that needed to be completed in the Larry Doby Complex, which would pretty much get us up to where we could be term ready to bring folks in.
That's correct.
Am I correct on that? Have you reached out, or have you talked with the city of Camden, or were you aware that the city of Camden is building the same type of park less than a mile away as a crow flies. And if you go by a lake, it may even be a half a mile. But I was just wondering, were you aware of that, or have you had any conversations with the city of Camden?
I was just aware of the splash pad that was mentioned by the group. That's the only part of it that I was aware of.
I've got here where it says the city got a $500,000 grant to improve their riverfront park project. And I know that they state here that it's a 24-acre riverfront environmental park. It has, they got a $500,000 land and water conservation fund, LWCF. They also, and it was made possible by the U.S. National Park Service and the South Carolina Department of Parks and Recreation, SCPRT. Did we ever try to contact any of those folks to see if we couldn't get a grant ourselves?
We actually, LWCF, we have gotten those grants before. Actually,
to be respectful, I'm talking about this project only.
This project we have not.
There's been no attempt to whatsoever.
No, sir.
Okay, I got it. I think the city's going to match $628,000. Were you aware? Was the Recreation Committee aware that we've got the same identical river park, less than probably about a crow's fly 1 mile from where we're doing ours? And as I looked at some of the things they were talking about doing, it's pretty much identical to what we're doing. We're going to have 2 riverfront properties sitting there. I mean, they talk about the kayaking, they talk about the fishing dock, $50,000, boardwalk bridges in certain areas, you know, of course, could be up to $20,000, and kayak launch, $50,000. I think that the city is, as I looked at it, they've got the identical same project we've got. I think we got an amphitheater. They're talking about building an educational facility, which may be the same thing, may not, I don't know. It just bothers me that we haven't reached out or tried to partner with the city in doing one huge river park right, instead of having 2 of them right there side by side with each other. I just feel like that's a duplication of efforts towards to provide services to the citizens of Kershaw County. I think the $500,000 that was collected, I think the rest of the money comes from, is it the H tax or the A tax with the city? The
H.
The H, hospitality tax, yeah, they've got that. Am I the only one, or is it this a duplication of services by the county and the city of Camden for the same type public park, servicing the same purpose on the waterfront, you know, in less than a mile apart, crows fly? Do you not see that? I'm asking the question.
There looks like there could. As I said, I have not seen that plan, so I'm not really sure about most of that, because with this being, you know, my first couple of months in this, you know, I was not.
I'm sure you've been getting a lot of advice on what direction to go in.
Right, as far as trying to move forward towards a phase 1 plan on this river parcel. Yes, sir.
And here's another issue I've got, and I had a citizen ask me to ask this question. Now, we will be responsible for maintaining this park.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was told, I had a citizen call me and say, look, ask him about Scott Park. Do we maintain Scott Park?
We have a joint effort there. We actually, as far as the walking track, we do that. We do the trash in the restrooms. As far as the grass cutting there, that's contracted by the city. So we have a joint effort with the city. They're responsible for
That's a good partnership we have on Scott Park, which is what I'm saying. Why didn't we try to do a partnership with the city of Camden instead of duplicating our efforts? You know, that was my concern. And by the way, if we're maintaining the walking track at Scott, it is washed out. Somebody almost fell and broke their leg the other day. It hasn't been maintained properly. I know we've had a lot of rain, but I've gotten some complaints on that. And here's where I have a problem with this. You know, I thought it was a foolish purchase in the beginning, but it was bought. We own it. I made the commitment that I want to see it successful because we own it. But I also want to make sure that things that we have prioritized that would bring in more folks, that river park will not bring in as many folks from outside as the fields if we had them if we had them fixed up to the point they needed to be to where we could draw in tournaments. Do you agree with that?
Well, we did have our Touch a Truck event, which is normally held in the past years at our rec department office. We have dump trucks, fire vehicles, just different kind of vehicles come out. We were actually able to move it to that river parcel this year. And we went from having a couple of hundred to having approximately 1,800 people at that event, with some residents from the Columbia area coming and checking it out as well. So I think there is potential for events that could draw large crowds. You know, we're talking about a Yak in the River event where we can put our kayaks in or take our kayaks out when we put in at the dam. We can come in with a concert of some type. You know, so there is lots of potential for some outside people coming in to our community and using that complex.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. But you know, what bothers me is when I see that what the city of Camden is doing with their walking trails, the bridges, the deep water canoe trail, the docks, the observatories, the waterfall, providing the park's main water source, a boat ramp. I just feel like we're absolutely cloning each other. I mean, we're doing the same thing that they're doing, and I just think it would have been, to me, a lot more reasonable and feasible if we would have tried and worked with the city of Camden on theirs and had some kind of joint project instead of duplicating the same thing at the expense of the taxpayers. That's just my opinion, the way I feel. So when the Recreation Commission came before us, they didn't prioritize anything. I think it was mentioned to them that some folks wanted it prioritized, but they didn't want to do that. They brought a list in here, and the riverfront property was way up on the top, within the top 10. And you're telling me now that those projects will not be completed before we start the river project?
Because, I mean, as Vic stated, the funds are not there to complete all those.
Okay, so the funds are not there to complete what we've already started, but we're going to start on another huge project.
Well, not necessarily. We're as a matter of fact, the KC West ball fields that are being built, that money was already set aside for that project, and we do have the funds set aside to start the backstop issues, the temporary fencing issues, the ADA compliancy at the pool for changing areas. Irrigation and turf issues, we're actually addressing that now. Because we actually pay an outside company to do some turf management for us now. So we're actually in the process of doing that as well. We do that yearly, and ant treatment, all that good stuff as far as turf management. So we are making progress with those projects.
Let me ask you this: are we going to eventually maybe apply for some grants to try to help out on some of these phases we have?
I'm sure of that.
Well, again, as I said, this is just a problem I have. Let me ask you this question. Do you have the staff to maintain that riverfront property?
Currently, we do not. So we are researching what would be a position to cover that property, which would be something like a park ranger who would open that park, make it available for the citizens, would be responsible for closing, making sure restrooms are clean.
Well, let me say this, and that sounds good, and I appreciate it, but to me, when I know for a fact that we've got 2 ambulances we didn't have the money to replace this year, and when we've got so many outstanding projects that we haven't put the money in to finish, I'm sure that there's been some money put in to try to get them started or to maybe finish parts of them, but the money's not there to finish all of them, and we all know that. And the Recreation Commission their position on this is what now at this point in time?
As it was presented to you guys, we gave it to them in our last rec commission meeting, and everybody seemed to be pleased about it.
So now they're on board and they're saying this is number one, above and beyond everything else.
I didn't say that they said it was number one. They're just
Well,
they
Shane,
approve it.
Mr. Shane, we're voting on $399,000 tonight. I would like to think it was number one. If we're going to put $400,000 more in it, we've already put $425,000 in it. And we also
Point of order, Mr.
No, there's no point of order.
He
Mr.
wasn't the rec director when that was brought before us.
Yes,
so
sir.
let's be fair to Mr. Duncan here.
I will, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Mr. Duncan, you know, I think a lot of you. I was so happy you got the job, and I think you're doing a great job. I'm just trying to get some clarification. You know, and it's not rude, Mr. Chairman, by asking questions. There just may be some uncomfortable questions, but the questions need to be answered. Bear with me one moment. I just got one more quick thing. But anyway, going back to what I was saying before the chairman called a point of order on me, which I think was out of line. Let me ask you this. Are they making it now top priority? Is the rec commission saying this is what they're advising us they want us to do? Yes or
like
no?
I said, no, they
Please.
did not. They did
No,
not.
as you recall, in this office, he was not here when we received the briefing from the Recreation Committee. And we can go back to the records, Mr. Jones. The Recreation Committee did not give us priorities. I can remember you being quite unhappy about that. Remember?
I wanted to know how they felt. I think you were unhappy about it as well, Mr. Chairman. You wanted them to give us priorities as well.
Well, don't impute that to me. No, that's not correct. Go ahead, please, Mr. Jones.
It is correct. Now, I'm going to try to finish before I'm interrupted again. Is this a top priority? Is this the number one priority we need to do? Because we're putting $400,000 into it tonight. Excuse me. Then I'll direct my question to the county administrator because I can't get an answer any other way. Tell me.
Mr. Duncan can't speak for the commission. The commission has not voted to make this the number one priority. Therefore, the answer to your question would have to be no, it's not their current number one priority because they have not taken a specific vote to make it the number one priority.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Tucker.
That's why you get paid the big bucks, guy. Welcome, and thank you for standing on your beliefs and your values. I'm glad that the chairman corrected because there was no priority when Mr. Caraway stood up here and gave that report some months back. These are two different parcels. I'll speak for you. The part that we're building is in the county. The part that the city's building is in the city. And we don't run the city, and the city don't run the county. Where we can collaborate and partner, we do. We're actually looking at a splash pad. You talked about Scott Park, where we're partnering. We partner where it makes sense, where it is healthy and good for both parties. Putting these two parcels together is not what we need to do, nor is it how it's going to get done. We're happy that the city is going to do a parcel down from us, so that gives our citizens even more access. I think that's a good thing, but you can't take city dollars and put it in the county, and you just can't solely take county dollars and just put it just in the city for city residents. So it has to be a combination that we want to stay conscious about. I want to also mention that we had the opportunity here as council to put a grant writer in it to help assist you with some of these grants and things, but we, the 7 of us, chose not to think that it was so important because we took it out because the administrator actually put it in. So I know that y'all have been very grant-driven in the past, and I know you will continue, but some of that lies up here on our decisions when the budget comes. So keep marching on. I'm happy about phase 1. Like I stated earlier, there's some other things that we can consider to help move recreation as a whole down the road and complete some other things. But I thank God for your leadership and your commission for making hard decisions. And don't ever speak for them if they haven't spoken to you. Thank you.
Other comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You certainly, please.
Thank you. Mr. Tucker, let me clarify one thing that you said that was not quite correct. You're right, on the grant writer, it was taken out of the budget. However, I proposed on how we could save money in economic development and take that money and make a grant writer, but it was also voted down by my colleagues. So I don't, but I guess what it bothers me is when we can't achieve something here, we make excuses as to why we didn't do it. I'd like somebody to tell me how we can do it, how we can make things work when it comes to these projects that are not completed. And I'm very happy for you. And you know I think the word each day. This is not personal, but we've got to have the questions answered. And I just don't feel that you guys really are confident that this should be the top priority of the county right now.
I mean, it's going to be a wonderful amenity for the
Sure, it will be.
county, because it will draw some outside business. So it is going to be a great park at some point.
Yeah. You've been working real close with Mr. Carpenter on this, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think I know where the direction has been coming from. Thank you.
Mr. Connell.
Mr. Chairman, question first for Mr. Carpenter. The rec department received, I'm trying to make sure I know the right amount. Was it 2.1 million or some odd bond 3 or 4 years ago?
About 2 million, yes, sir.
And how many years ago was that?
2014.
2014. All right, so a little before I got here. Ultimately, your priorities are where you spend your money. And that 2.1 million went to whatever it was that the rec commission and the county thought was important at the time. It could have been some of these items here that are on this list in no particular order, I understand it. But they spent the money that way. It could have gone to irrigation, turf development, backstop extensions. It could have gone to any of those things. So I think we're a county that can handle complex issues and multiple projects at a time. We've got the resources to do it. But you know, we've already set aside $400,000 in addition to that 2.1 that the rec department just had to use basically at their discretion. We've already set aside $700,000 to $800,000 for the Westwater E-complex. Is that right? About that amount?
How much?
$700,000 to $800,000, depending on lighting, right?
Well, no, no. What we have done is we have two sources of funds from reserves, which are approximately $450,000. Then we also have available funds that were from the bond still available. So it added up to close to 700,000. Yes,
okay, so about that amount. I was just
yes, sir.
Not looking at my notes, but kind of going off the cuff. So I think we attack projects and problems as they make sense. I am a little disappointed tonight, but I guess I have to take some responsibility. I am a little disappointed that my understanding was we set the $400,000 in a different direction, took it out of the bracket that we had for this park so that we could investigate using, some call it other people's money, and trying to figure out where there'd be matching funds, if there'd be value there, if PRT or someone else stepped up. So on that point, I'd like to ask, are any of the grants for PRT or other state programs, are they retroactive? If you've expended money that can support tourism in the state or in your area, can you apply for a grant and say, you know, we just spent $400,000, for example, and get reimbursed?
No, sir, you can't get reimbursed money spent, but nothing we have or have not done stops us from putting in for any of these grants. We can't put in for a grant until we have a legitimate project. This is not a legitimate project at this point because council hasn't authorized us to proceed with it.
Right, so
we've done some basic design, as Mr. Grimble said. It's not an engineering work. We don't have the authorization. That's why we're here. If council chooses not to, then that's fine. It stops here.
Sure.
If council chooses to go forward and authorizes it, then we can start reaching out to various companies. I mean, Duke and Invista and the hospital.
So what I'm hearing is we wouldn't even have a basis to apply for grants.
Correct,
until
because they would ask to know what it is, and it would be at this point just the staff trying to get a commitment, and they wouldn't give a commitment for something that we didn't have actual costs for by putting out to bid, things like that.
Okay, and on the point of grant writers, I really think we need one, but ultimately, for me, and I guess the majority of council, it came down to we felt like we needed an SRO a little bit more than a grant writer at the time. I do hope it works its way into the budget in the future so that we can have that and access that skill set. One of the things I think is unique about this property and why I personally like it and why I think we had such a good response at the opening day was you have the most popular boat ramp on the river in the county right there next to it, Patriots Landing. Everybody knows it. It's adjacent to it. That's why I thought it was a good move to use tourism limited ATAX funds to purchase this parcel because it's right next to a heavily used boat ramp, which is really popular. And you can see from one of the diagrams here that the proposal is to connect the two and allow people who are boating on the river to stop and recreate and do other things with their family ideally. So that's one of the things I think is unique about it. Mr. Jones, I hope to answer one of your questions or comments in how practically a project like this can work or make a little bit more sense. I'm not sure if it's because of a request I made, but the 1.4 acres that's carved out at the top, I know we've had local veterans associations request that a monument be moved. Actually, my great uncle was part of that jump, Ivy Connell, and sadly died in war in the reality of that reenactment a couple months later when he jumped out of a plane and fought for country. But ideally, I think we should, in the future, look at maybe marketing and selling 1 acre of that top portion. We have some really strong comps that are nearby it. A mirror property on the other side of the bridge, and granted it's near heavy retail, so the valuation skewed a little bit, but 2.52 acres, actually this is where Mid-Carolina purchased it, was sold for about $694,000 per acre. Same traffic counts that would go by this river parcel. And then 1.38 acres sold on the other side of the bridge, kind of near where Big Lots is, for about $568,000 per acre, and that was just 3 months ago. So we're looking at the same traffic counts. I think there'd actually be value there in increasing the tax base, one, Mr. Jones, by having maybe a restaurant or something up, getting some money out of the transaction, and that you could roll back into the park potentially, and then also having just a nice feature. Personally thinking about having little kids and going to the park, being there with my wife, you know, if the kids want to grab something to eat, you can go right up and grab something to eat and then go back to the park, and you get to extend the time that you get to recreate with your family. So that's one thing I think would make a little bit of sense if the council would consider that in the future, selling a portion of it. Two other questions or comments I had were, I don't see bathrooms, unless I can't read. Is that behind the amphitheater? Is that a proposed restroom, Mr. Grimble? Yes. Okay, and
That would not be phase one.
yeah, that's not phase one, right? Because those are for the people that have contacted me about this project. They're really excited. They love the opening day. They want to make sure they have lighting so they can use it for extended hours, and they want to make sure there are bathrooms there. So with the restroom, assuming it comes in a phase two, if we approve it at some point, would you recommend sewer, or is that a proposed pump station? I'm just thinking about if there is a musical event, you've got, say it rained the day before, you have a slightly saturated field, and you got a bunch of people trying to use the restroom, you don't want to have a septic issue at a public event like that. What would you propose there? Mm-hmm.
If I could, sir, we're live streaming. If you could speak into the mic, then I think folks that'll be watching this can hear what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you. So in talking to the engineer, again, early concepts, he said from where it's located, probably would need a pump station or or septic. And your comment about so many people using the bathroom, I mean, it's designed so that if you flush the toilet, basically, every effort, you know, it wouldn't overcome the septic field. So those kind of issues, all those kind of issues need to be ferreted out and designed as we get into the actual working documents. But that is a restroom, and it's,
okay,
as you well know, very important to the park.
Thank you for that. And then one other question I had was the emergency call station. It floods infrequently, it has flooded recently with a lot of the high water events we heard about from Duke Power. So are those impervious to water and waterproof, or I'm just wondering, is there an off switch if you ultimately have an emergency call center down there? Because it'll flood that high if it's that close to the river's edge.
Again, not sure.
Okay.
We may use, and this is just an example, there may be 5 out there, 4 out there, we're not sure. I talked to the electrical engineer. These actually may be solar powered. So if the river flooded, they wouldn't go out. But again, great question, but all that needs to be
Yes, sir. Okay.
designed out. It's just, again, a master plan or a concept.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, just to wrap up my thoughts then, Mr. Chairman, overall, I think I'll support this tonight. The rec department's had over $2.5 million roughly that they've been able to use recently and are still using. I just think it's a great project. Thanks, Shane.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Bozard.
Yes, I want to, you spoke of lighting. There's no lighting on here. I don't think they're planning on using this that night.
There's
Not
no,
in phase 1, no, sir.
Not in phase one.
That's
There's
what I'm
lighting on
talking
there, but it's
about.
not budgeted.
Phase 1, no, there's no lighting.
That's right.
Thank you, I'm finished.
Ms. Jones.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. There's no lighting and there's no bathrooms.
Portalettes, well, portalettes.
Well, there'd be porta-johns out there. Going back to something Mr. Cornell said just a few minutes ago about grants, that investing this money, we can apply for grants. Actually, we could have applied for grants without putting this $399,000 into it tonight, correct, Mr. Carpenter? With having a drawing, having a concept, having already bought the property for $425,000.
No, sir, because they're going to want to know what it is we're asking them to fund, and without council approval, I can't say that we were funding this or that because council hasn't authorized us to build anything yet.
So you're saying that with this concept, adopting this concept with a vote, we could not go out for
Oh,
a
I'm
grant?
sorry, I misunderstood you. If it's adopted, yes, sir, then we could.
I knew I was right. The $399,000 wouldn't be necessary if we adopted that plan and went out for grants.
If you can get grants, absolutely not.
Correct. Correct. I just want to make that point clear. And you may have understood it that way, but I didn't. I took it another way, that we had to vote tonight to put this additional $400,000 in to apply for grants, which is not true.
Well, yeah, and that's a very, Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, please.
That's a very fair point, Jimmy. And I hope the intention of council is tonight, if we vote in favor of this and set these funds aside, that we would have, in fact, apply for grants. I remember we actually had to do the same thing, Vic, with the Elgin Executive Park. Council had to vote in favor of the park design overall and say
It
we
was
want.
funded too. We put money in the budget for that park as well.
Right, but the point is, we're actually not going to have to spend, hopefully, all of that money through either PRT or getting funding through the state budget. So even if we allot it in the budget, that makes us eligible to apply for the grant. It doesn't mean we have to spend the money if we can get a grant to.
We would need to spend some money in the sense of coming up with some better designs so we could, as opposed to just an estimate. They're not going to fund an estimate.
It's the same thing we had to do in Elgin.
Okay. I'm ready to call the question.
Can I finish up on one thing you just said?
Let me finish up. I'm ready to call the question. I would say this, some housekeeping. We have a letter from a veterans organization. Mr. Lackey's still here. I'd like to ask you, as a part of this discussion, to draft a response for me to sign back to them, because I wouldn't want our veterans to think we're not listening to them, okay? And the second piece of, excuse me, Ms. Jones, I'll wait for you to finish.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But the second thing I'd like to do by way of housekeeping here, to keep us above board here, is render a report from the administrator back to the Recreation Committee, because as in the Airport Committee, we found that we need to make sure they're informed of our deliberations, okay? And so I'd look to our administrator to do that. Okay, please, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I really appreciate Steve Zobel's remarks when he came in tonight as one of your recreation commissioners. And he said he was 100% for this park. However, he just felt the other projects haven't been completed, and that was his major concern, and that we're going into this with a heck of a lot of money, $400,000. And again, Mr. Tucker, thank you so much for recognizing that the projects haven't been completed and being committed to making sure those projects are completed that are outstanding. And I know you will. I'm done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'm ready to call the question.
I know you are. Can I just respond?
Yeah, please.
Mr. Jones, when I lay out this highway, it's going to be a super highway. I would need your vote to support it, but I will have it for you come January.
All right, very good. We have the motion now to approve this expenditure and plan phase one and with that, ask you to vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. It's Mr. Arledge, Mr. Tucker, Mr. Gardner, myself, Mr. Bozard, and Mr. Connell. All those opposed is Mr. Jones, and it passes. We move. Thank you, Ms. Shane. Thank you, sir. Safe journey home. If you bought a house here, you could be going home in 5 minutes.
Shane.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say, I'm not up here frowning at you guys. I left my glasses at home, so that's why I'm squinting.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you.
Can I ask the administrator, because I didn't see any of these until I got my package. In the future, that maybe we can get a little early or come to your office or whatever when they're available.
I mean, this is the basic concept that we gave out to council.
This hadn't changed.
So it hadn't really changed much, but absolutely.
Yeah, very good.
Yes,
absolutely. Better communication.
Thank you.
Item number 3 is update on county tax notices. Item India, it's up on the slide. No vote is required here, but an update from the administrator. Sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, as you're aware, there was a glitch in the software that is used to figure the tax notices that go out to the county after the reassessment. The glitch was essentially the company that processes all of that information. This was the first time that they had handled a reassessment. So there was a lifting of the cap on how much reassessment could go up in a period of time. Approximately 5,000 parcels were affected almost totally, vacant lots or land. A small number of houses were affected, but the vast majority were lots. The company that, Patriot Software, has acknowledged the mistake, taken responsibility for it. They have determined what went wrong. They are paying for the cost to resubmit the tax notices and to mail them out. You have in there as well a letter that will be going out to all the taxpayers to let them know. In addition to the glitch itself, there was just a reality of the way the state handles taxes, and that the local option sales tax did not generate as much money last year as the year before. Therefore, that is a credit against your taxes. So even though the tax did not go up because the credit was lower, they paid more. In most cases, $1, $2, $3, a relatively small amount for most properties. So the two issues happened. So a number of people who thought their taxes had gone up, it was not the taxes, it was the local option sales tax. As we further have looked into it, it was not just Kershaw County that was affected. This is statewide. Lee County, Spartanburg County, we know also we're dealing with it. Lee County has still not sent out their tax notices. They've not been able to send their notices out. Spartanburg just got theirs out about a week ago to all of their citizens as well. So we are one of several, and it is now the company that prints and manages the paperwork for us, which is called QS1. They've got everybody, all these counties coming to them to try to get, so we're in a queue with other counties to get the notices actually printed and mailed out. So even though it won't cost us anything, we have to get the company to physically do it. So we have publicized this through media, through Facebook, through press releases, trying to get the word out to all citizens. To date, we've had 68 have called or come in the office with questions about their tax notices. So that is an update, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, open for discussion. No vote required. It seems to me we got out in front of this thing that we're hostage to a contractor like other counties are, and we are leading the pack and getting our people informed and reimbursed where needed. What comments? Mr. Tucker.
I want to make sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make sure I understood you, Mr. Carpenter. You said that most counties that were affected went through reassessment. Is that was part of the glitch in the system?
I don't know that the company had different issues with different counties. So it wasn't just, in our case, it was the reassessment that triggered it. But it appears to have also been the same case, I think, with Spartanburg as well. That was also the issue affecting them. I don't know why, same company with Lee County. I don't necessarily, it could be the same thing. I just don't know what their issue was.
Okay.
But it was all their tax notices.
Well, comments? Yep, Ben.
Vic, I was just wondering, do you really believe this is a one-off in relation to the reassessment, or do we need to evaluate whether or not we should seek another service provider?
Well, the company provides to, I think it's 34 counties in the state, and has been a good provider for the assessor's office. We haven't had any issues like this with them. We've had them for about 4 years, I guess. Previously, QS1 had handled the assessment side as well, and they're very difficult. We frequently had issues with them, so it was the request before you were in office, but the treasurer, the auditor, and the assessor came to council and asked that we go with this company for all of our data information collection, management of the taxes. Patriot was experienced with the assessing side. We were the guinea pig for treasurer and auditor, and that did not go as well. So we returned to QS1 within several months at the request of the auditor and the treasurer. But we stayed with the assessor's office because that is where they had gotten their experience in the state, and they had done a good job up until now. So we've got no reason to question their ability to do the assessing side. And since then, they have figured out the treasurer and the auditor, though we're not suggesting that we look to them for those, but they have got several counties now in the state that are doing that as well without any issues.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other comments? Sammy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This goes back to what you just said. Who else does this besides Patriots in the state?
QS1.
Yeah, so it's just
got
two
choices.
Yeah, or we're gonna handwrite our own.
Some years ago, about a consortium of 5 or 6 counties in the state, most Richland, Anderson, bigger counties, got together to create their own software. They said, this can't be that hard, let's do it. 6 years later, they gave up trying to do it.
Right.
They were not able to write their own, even coming together as a consortium of counties and hiring staff to do that. They gave up and went with one of these companies. So it's, in our case, we've got 40-some thousand parcels. Obviously a big county, you've got hundreds of thousands of parcels, and each one is unique and different. So, it's certainly nothing that we take it's nothing that we would want to happen. But we believe that the issue, first of all, it's not an issue that was staff error or staff driven. If it was, we would have handled that, but it's not. It is an issue that affected others as well. So all we can do is going forward, try to learn from what happened with the company and make sure that our process of review and of oversight is better. And that's something that our new auditor and I have already talked about going forward, what we can do to make sure that things happen from all the various departments in a timely fashion, so this ideally doesn't happen.
Well, I want to say thank you to you and staff for doing that, and whatever safety features we need to put in that you do that. And also, I just want to say to my colleagues, we just can't cut our nose off to spite our face, because we really don't have a lot of choice out there who we're going to deal with. So thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Other comments? On the issue of taxes, the county has to know we are well run, and we're taking the people's money. And then, as we heard tonight on this park and other things, these issues are hotly debated by this group of 7 men over the last 4 years I've been here as a guarantor of the public trust. And I appreciate the administrator and your comments, Hal, on making the most of every nickel penny that's given us. Thank you for that. Would there be any other comments, Mr.
Right
Jones?
quickly, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to add, as far as the tax notices going out incorrectly, I can appreciate all the understanding as to how and why it happened, but bottom line is the buck stops with us. We're responsible for that. And, we need to make sure it's done right next year.
It is a little bit, I agree with Mr. Jones, and I disagree slightly. And that is the auditor is is not a part of this body. But when the people of the county look at the county headquarters, it doesn't matter that they elect the auditor separate from us. And so Mr. Jones' point is quite correct. But technically, the auditor doesn't work for us. And the collaboration between the auditor and the assessor and the administrator are absolutely essential. And Vic has told me that they're going to sit down when this is all over with and sort out what happened. Even more detail than we've heard tonight. Thank you, Jimmy. That's right. Other points. I propose we move on to the next item, which was an amendment to the agenda. Item number 4 under new business is a resolution honoring Sheriff Jim Matthews. Let me read that. It's rather lengthy. I'll shorten it here and there. You all have copies, and then we'll entertain a motion and vote. Whereas it is appropriate that this county council should honor those citizens who have performed with uncommon devotion and enthusiasm throughout their careers in law enforcement. Sheriff Jim Matthews has devoted his life to the preservation of law and order and the protection of our fellow citizens. Mr. Matthews has served for 37 years in law enforcement at the local and federal level. He began his career with the Lexington County Sheriff's Department in the early 70s and then went on to work at the Columbia Police Department and Richland County Sheriff's Department. And whereas Mr. Matthews is a graduate of USC and he graduated from the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy, winning the J.P. Strom Award as the outstanding student. And whereas in 1979 he was one of the first 3 South Carolinians to be hired by the DEA, was a top student in academics and physical training, no surprise there. And while with the DEA, he conducted complex long-term drug investigations, homicide investigations, and extensive undercover work in other parts of the United States and the Caribbean. Whereas Mr. Matthews was an instructor at DEA, as well as the FBI Academy at Quantico. He served for nearly 6 years with the DEA in northern Thailand, where he was in charge of all U.S. government narcotics enforcement in Thailand along the Thai-Burmese border. Upon his return, he supervised a multi-drug and violent crime task force in Atlanta, then became a resident agent in charge at the DEA Columbia office, where he formed a multi-agency drug task force that worked with various agencies in the Midlands. He retired from the DEA after 22 years of distinguished service and elected sheriff of Kershaw County in November of 2010, taking office in January of 2011, and in 2013 awarded the Strom Thurmond Award for Excellence in Law Enforcement and selected Sheriff of the Year for all of the state of South Carolina. In 2016, he received the Kiki Camarena Law Enforcement Award for the state of South Carolina, presented by the Elks Association. Now, therefore, be it resolved by Kershaw County Council that Sheriff Jim Matthews be honored and commended for his dedicated service to Kershaw County. We extend to him our best wishes for success in all his future endeavors. May we have a motion to approve. Mr. Arledge.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to honor Sheriff Matthews this resolution in the first meeting of next year in January.
Okay, we can have a second.
Second.
Second from Mr. Bozard. Any discussion? Okay, very good. We can probably discuss it then. I think we move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous. And Mary, if you'd kindly prepare it and have it signed. Thank you very much. With that, we move to council briefings, beginning with Mr. Connell.
I just want to say thanks for everyone that engaged in the discussion tonight and participated. Thank you very much, Amy, for telling us about the Chamber's future. We hope it's very bright and look forward to supporting it. Thank you, Shane, as well, for your presentation tonight. During this Christmas season, I hope our hearts will all be tender and we'll look out for those that are in need and maybe not going to have such a great season because of struggles, illness, or otherwise. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of County Council. Just a couple of things right quickly. Ben Connell, I appreciate you thinking outside the box. I liked what you said tonight about the possibility of maybe trying to sell an acre of that land. I think it's very worthwhile in looking into, and that was a good proposal. I hope this council will go along with that. Dennis Arledge, congratulations. You won't be with us in January, but you will take office in July. Is that correct? Well, I wish you the best. I truly do. I think you'll do a wonderful job and represent the people in Kershaw County extremely well. Just a couple remarks here. Sort of a year-end report on economic development from Jimmy Jones. According to the Kershaw County Economic Development Office website, Kershaw County has lost 605 jobs announced and $98.5 million announced in investments since August 2018. In August of this year, Kershaw County Economic Development Office, under locations and expansions, claimed 1,010 new jobs and $360.78 million in new investments since 2009. Now, the Kershaw County Economic Development Office, under locations and expansions, claims 405 announced new jobs and $262.28 million announced in new investments, a loss of 605 announced jobs and $98.5 million in announced investments, according to the Kershaw County Economic Development Office. As a result of my year-long efforts, we now have corrected and a more accurate information as to jobs and investments. So after massive increases in spending for economic development, Kershaw County has huge announced job reductions and investment reductions. Folks, our future lies in the effective economic development with the mega site. I've said that time and time again. If we get a hit, it's going to be with the mega site through the Department of Commerce, promoting Kershaw County on our industrial sites. Our Economic Development Office efforts and spending are out of line and not effective, are getting results. Folks, this is just a fact. Mr. Chairman, I wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and that concludes my report.
Thanks, Mr. Jones. Mr. Arledge.
Thank you. I feel a little like a local minister said one time.
Snodgrass.
Not him. He said he was able to make everybody in his congregation happy. Some when he came, the rest when he left. So I kind of feel that at this point, I'm able to make most of my constituents happy one way or the other. It's been a fast 4 years. Just to highlight some of the accomplishments that I think that we have been involved in, and most of them I've supported. We've taken the recycling centers and made a huge turnaround on those, taking capital money, and I think we've solved the problem there, and I think that was one of the highlights. Vision 2030, this pathway to our future, completed in this past 4 years, and it's our roadmap. EMS transition from the hospital to the county. And we have now updated the equipment at the best it's been, I think, since its inception. And we are now completing it. I think we have a ribbon cutting come Thursday for a new EMS station. Kershaw County as an All-American. I mean, that's just, who would have guessed that 4 years ago? None of us would have. The Recreation Department, Shane and your predecessor have done an outstanding job. You've dealt with adversity. We've dealt with curves thrown to us on properties, with ball fields, and we've done the best that I think anyone could have. To the county employees, I commend you. You do a wonderful job with what you have at your disposal.
Amen.
I hope you've realized that we've tried to update the equipment. in order for you to do your job and perform at a higher level. We have attempted to raise salaries the best that we can. We know you have bills to pay and families to feed. And we're just not going to pat you on the back and give you a big thumbs up. I hope this council will continue to support the employees. To the staff, Vic, Danny, Alan, Trout, and most of all, Mary. Amen. Never have I worked with a finer group of caring professionals.
Amen.
You are committed to the citizens of Kershaw County. Your dedication to the citizens, employees, and council, in my opinion, is second to none. If you'll bear with me, I want to read just a quick story that our governor, Henry McMaster, told at a meeting that I happened to attend. 2 boys were given the job of cleaning out the horse stables. Upon receiving their shovels, they went to the barn, and opening the door, they discovered manure all the way up to the door. One boy just sat down and said, "There's no way, it's an impossible job." The second boy started shoveling as fast as he could. The first boy says, "Why are you working so hard?" The second boy says, "With all this much manure, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere." To my council members, at times we work together as a team, and as some have said, as brothers. Not always, but when we needed to, we did. We made difficult decisions and did not always agree. But if we always agreed, then we would not need 7 of us. We would only need just one. Mm-hmm. The citizens trust us to make our call and let history decide the outcome. Be proud of our accomplishments and speak positive of Kershaw County's direction and future. And as the little boy said, keep digging. And to the citizens that elected me, and I use the term citizens instead of taxpayers and or voters, I pledged my support to our citizens when sworn to office. It would be easy to sit up here and vote no on most decisions. Many times this right arm was heavy to lift. But I've always asked myself, what's best for the majority of our citizens? And again, history will determine if we're right or wrong. But you elected me to make these decisions, and I appreciate the trust that you put into me these past 4 years. And I look forward to continuing to work for Kershaw County citizens as your auditor. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Arledge. Sir, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly and quickly here, Mr. Arledge, I want to say thank you too. I'm sorry you didn't give me my props for the last 4 years. You're cheating off my paper over here. I'm helping you, assisting your arm up on tough votes, but I still love you. Going to miss you, buddy. I would like to say to Miss Amy, congratulations. Look forward to your move. If there's anything that I can do as an individual as well as a member of the chamber, please feel free to reach out to me. And Shane, I said it earlier, you just got to keep plowing, man. I believe in what you're doing and what the Recreation Commission is suggesting and recommending to you, and so we'll see these projects complete with due time. We've got the splash pad, bike trails, walking trails, and many other things to look forward to in the future in our county, so it's bright. And I say to all of you up here, it's been a gracious and lovely year. Miss Mary, I thank you as well. I have felt that we've made some ground. Probably didn't make all the ground that I would like to have seen, but we did make progress, and I want to wish each and every one of you, the citizens included, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. That concludes my report.
Yeah, Mr. Gardner. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, very
briefly. Again, Mr. Arledge, thank you for your service to Kershaw County. It's been a pleasure serving with you these 4 years, and best of luck in your future as our auditor. Look forward to continue to work with you in that capacity. And again, the ribbon cutting for the new EMS station on Porter Road, Thursday, 1 o'clock. Look forward to that, and Merry Christmas.
Yep, thank you. Mr. Bozard.
Yes, we had a very good parade Friday night. Lights flew off. They changed it from Saturday due to the rain. That was a good decision. And don't forget the Borkin parade this Sunday. And we going to have fun down there also. And Dennis, it's been a good 2 years with you, and I wish you luck, brother, in the future. In regards to Mr. Jones's comments concerning economic development, I have had some questions brought to me by the citizens, and I tried to answer them, and I talked with Peggy about it, and from what she tells me, I answered pretty much correctly. And in talking with Vic, I've asked that in January, that he and Peggy address some of these issues brought on by Mr. Jones and put it on the agenda for January. So not only council here and all the citizens will know exactly what happened with some of these issues and how they came about. So, Mr. Carpenter, I appreciate your help in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll close it out. First of all, we're at full employment and we can't fill the jobs we have. So the major point here is we are moving forward. We just need to win more business. Secondly, I would tell you Lugoff now has a park. And let that sink in. And we're a well-managed county, very well-managed indeed. We can walk and chew gum at the same time and probably do a few other things. If we can't just do A and only A before we do B, C, and D. And I know with the management team we have in place, with the leadership of Mr. Carpenter, we'll be successful just like we were as an all-American county and where we were on the audit, fiscally responsible and dynamic. I want to join in thanking Dennis Arledge. Good luck to you, brother. And I want to welcome the new council member who will soon join us. With that, I turn it over to the administrator, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, a few items for you to know. Well, more than a few, actually, several. There was another parade, Mr. Bozard, as well, the Camden Christmas Parade. County departments participated in that. You see in front of you Public Works to the left and 911 to the right. I'm sorry, Solid Waste to the left, 911 to the right, and then we had Public Works also in the parade with units as well. So county employees are doing their best to get out. And Shane, was there a rec unit in there? Not this time. Okay, well, y'all pretty much burned out in October with the trick-or-treat trail. So
rained out.
Also, some of y'all have gotten to know over the year Doug Porter, who's our sewer manager. Doug will be retiring. He'll be retiring in a couple weeks, taking his well-deserved vacation off that. Then he'll be coming back as a part-timer, working on the parts of the sewer department that he enjoys doing. And we'll be bringing another person to work with Russ in the management of the wastewater department. So, also would like to remind council that tomorrow at 11:30 is employee banquet out at the rec department. So that'll be 11:30 till 1. Please, if you can make it, we always look forward to having council and elected officials there. Also, Mr. Bozard, somewhat in tandem with what you're requesting with economic development, on January 15th, we will be offering EDO 101. We did that a couple years ago. We're offering it again. It'll be Tuesday the 15th from 5 to 7. SC Power Team is working with us, as well as a site consultant from out of state who will be coming in and going over various aspects of what's involved in economic development. It's open to council, the public, anyone who wishes to come. Hopefully we'll have a good group there that can also hopefully answer questions that may be out there in people's minds as well. So that'll be on the 15th of January. Wanted to notify council that with January approaching, I will be making some staff changes. One of the staff changes I'll be making is that I'll be moving Russ Van Patten into the airport liaisons position. I've got other tasks for Barry to do with the construction project fixing to come out there. Of course, Russ is our stormwater manager, our construction engineer, our road engineer. So that's Russ's background, and he's certainly used to dealing with engineers. We're also going to be putting out for bid the engineering contract for the airport, that Russ will oversee that process. So Russ will be taking over in January the airport, working as a liaison with the Airport Commission. Also, apparently at some point during the day today, the airport manager, Ron Prestige, became a grandfather of a little baby girl who was snowed in Raleigh. He had to drive up there in a four-wheel truck to get them. She was several days overdue when the snow came, so they were, as you can imagine, rather panicked about all that. But she came today. They got her to the hospital, and all is well with the Prestige family. And with that, Mr. Chairman, those are the comments. Well, I will say one thing. The conversation that we had tonight are good conversations. You know, nothing worth having is easy, and nothing worth having should be quick. So, you know, all the questions are legitimate questions. They're good questions. They need answering. So, you know, I as always appreciate and encourage. Now, this is Shane's first go at it. You know, he'll get a little more used to it with time. But again, you know, there's nothing that that we're doing that does not deserve the scrutiny that each and every one of you should give it, feel you need to give it. And staff will never have any expectation but good questions from you and our best to answer them for you. So I just want to make sure that that's understood, that you know, hard questions are part of the job, and we do our best to answer them, and hopefully we'll always be able to, but certainly encourage the questions always to come. And that, Mr. Chairman, my report.
All right, Consigliere.
Mr. Chairman, I have Tommy Morgan here tonight, and I believe we want to have a brief executive session on a legal case that's been resolved.
Okay, so we have a legal case in executive session, and we have a contractual matter, I think maybe one or two.
Two brief contractual matters.
Two brief contractual matters and one legal matter. Do we have a motion to adjourn for an executive session without a vote?
So motion made.
Okay, a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Connell. Any discussion?
Sir, should we invite Councilman-elect
No.
Davis Snodgrass or not?
No.
This is not something.
No, I'll make that ruling. But we can bring him up to speed after as a matter of record. With that, let's move to a vote. All those in favor of the executive session, raise your hand. And without a vote, yes, we'll move forward. And we are temporarily adjourned. motion to come out of executive session?
Second.
Mr. Gardner and Mr. Bozard.
What was that, Mr. Gardner and
Any
Mr. Bozard?
discussion? No discussion. Let's vote on it. All those in favor of coming out of executive
Bozard.
session? Signify it's unanimous.
And,
We're out of executive session. Do we have a
and
motion to
Gardner.
adjourn?
So moved.
So that's
We have a
Gardner.
Second from Mr. Arledge. Second from Mr. Arledge. The last time. Any discussion?
Can we please stay?
There is none. We'll now vote. All those in favor, so signify. And we are adjourned.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
All those in favor leave.